All right, hello, welcome. My name is Shaina. I'm an astrologer, and today we are talking about Uranus. Yes, we are continuing my little Uranus mini-series. So I just last week did Uranus in Gemini and what that means, so I'll link that up in the cards. And so this week we are talking about transit Uranus throughout the houses of a birth chart. So basically today we're talking about transits, okay? And basically all transits are, specifically for this video, because Uranus just entered Gemini, it's about, let's say 0 degrees Gemini, just for an example. For this video, you are going to go in your birth chart, find out which house 0 degrees Gemini falls in. I'm a Placidus astrologer, so it depends specifically based upon your birth chart, not just your rising sign, where 0 degrees Gemini is falling for you. And basically whatever house it falls in, that is the area of life that Uranus will be kind of intervening with or shaking shit up in that house. And so basically I'll be going through all 12 houses today. I've done this video with Saturn, Neptune, and Pluto. So I'll link that playlist, my playlist all about my different transit planets I've spoken about. So now I have done this with Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. I've done it with almost all of the outer planets except for Jupiter, which is really exciting. So if you're kind of wanting to know about your forecast, there you go. You know what? Speaking of forecasts, since that's what I'm talking about today, I'm actually doing a little special on my website where I'm selling transit readings, $75 for 30 minutes. These will be pre-recorded. Thank you to everybody who has purchased their readings so far. They will be getting out to everyone in the first 2 weeks of August. I still have some in stock. I only put a limited number in stock, so once they're gone, they're gone. I'm really excited. Well, I guess I should say I'm really curious, or I'm really anticipating what this experience will be like shifting from one generation to another so clearly, and knowing astrologically that it's happening, I think is really interesting. So I wanted to kind of dive deeper, talk about it more, which is why I did this special sale on my website, which will be linked down below. But also I'll actually be going out of town for about 2 weeks at the end of this month. So you will not hear from me for 2 weeks, but then I will come back, and that's when I will be doing the readings and everything. Speaking of advertising, let's get the rest of the advertising out of the way. So if you're watching this video at a later date, don't worry. I always sell full-length birth chart readings on my website, shainaemily.com. I sell full-length birth chart readings, transit progress chart readings, synastry readings, tarot readings. I also sell pre-recorded readings over there if you wanted one and you missed out on the sale. I also have a TikTok, an astrology TikTok at shaina.emily. I post super frequently over there, and I go live every Thursday at 5:30 p.m. Pacific time. And lastly, I have a backup TikTok at shaina.emily backup. If I do post while I'm at my New York trip, I will be posting onto that TikTok. So if you're curious, I want to post, but I'm also so not a lifestyle girly. But anyways, that's besides the point. Let's get into this video because I know it's going to be long. So before we get into the main bulk of the video, which is going through the 12 houses, I wanted to bring up a question that I've been getting really frequently. I think it's a great question, but it is very challenging for me to explain it over the comment section multiple times and type it out. So I figured because so many people have asked and because I think it's such a great valid question, I figured I'd answer it in this video. So basically, as many of you guys know, I did a whole series about interceptions. I'll link that in the cards if you don't know what I'm talking about. But if you, for example, know you have an interception, you may be wondering when a outer planet transit goes through that sign, how does that affect you? Well, it comes into play very greatly, right? Now, some people have said, oh, does that mean that I just don't experience the transit? No, not at all. Sorry. You don't just get away with not experiencing, a transit, honestly. But do you experience it differently than everyone else? Yes. I do think that when, and your sun can be intercepted, Mercury, Venus, Mars, all that kind of stuff, right? That at one point will go past your interception. For example, I've had Uranus intercepted in Taurus in my transit chart. So this basically depends on your interception, all that kind of stuff. But it basically makes that energy feel a little bit more unattainable to you, or more than anything, unrelatable to you. While everybody else is maybe going through this blah, blah, blah transit, you don't feel like you understand that energy, or you agree with that energy, or you resonate with that energy. You heard me in my last video complain about Uranus and Taurus and how it bothered me, how I felt like everybody was just drawing this line in the sand of being stubborn, and my party chose this, so I'm sticking with this, right? That's very Taurus energy. I don't have any planets in Taurus. I have a Taurus interception. So when I see everybody acting like that, I go like this, it's still affecting me, right? It's still going on. If you see smoke, I have an incense lit again. Just expect that to be a thing. Okay. I don't think there's a fly though. Wow. Okay, sorry. For example, you know, I still experience this Uranus and Taurus transit. I watched it happen around me. It just felt very unrelatable, and I didn't really resonate with it as much. And it can really impact your ability to, I think, experience some like let's say you have Aries intercepted. When everybody's going through that Aries sun time, you're not going to feel that big jolt of energy and want to go outside like everybody else is. You may see everybody wanting to go outside and spend time in the summer, but you may be like, oh God, I don't know if I can go out and do that. And it may trigger your Aries interception issues of maybe there will be situations where you need to stand up for yourself, but you're nervous too because your Aries is intercepted. So while other people are going off and standing up for themselves and saying, I want this, and going out and getting things, you sit at home and you're jealous and you wonder, why can't you do the same? You know, or if you do try to do it, people say, hey, you can't do that, right? It plays out exactly like an intercepted, you know, planet natally. It's just something that is temporary, short term, and it feels a little bit, it's external. It's not coming from, you know, the call is not coming from inside of the house. It's happening around you. And sometimes you can also just feel like very observant, if it's an outer planet, like observant of it going on. How do I put this? I think it's also a good thing to note, like, oh, this is a time when I have to learn about this energy and start to understand it as well. Like, it's going to trigger you. Maybe, you know, you spent your whole life not giving a shit that you have a Virgo interception, never wanting to learn how to clean anything up. And then I'm making it up, right? Saturn goes through Virgo, and all of a sudden the world, you know, all of a sudden you're in a situation where you're a single mom with a kid and you have to learn how to clean things up and take care of the house and do all that thing that you didn't have to do in the rest of your life, but you feel very unsupported by it because nobody's showing you how, so you have to learn it on your own. Does that make sense? So yes, intercepted transit planets play out, I think, very strongly, but it is so dependent on what energy you're talking about. You know, it's just like a natal interception of how it plays out. But hopefully that makes sense. Hopefully that resonates. It's also, I think, very common when you're going through, when there's like an outer planet transit, maybe somebody of that energy will be brought into your life. And so you have to learn or confront those traits and those qualities and how you deal with it and how you feel about it, so on and so forth. But yeah, so hopefully that answers your guys' question. If you're wanting a specific interpretation of your specific intercepted energy, you know, maybe you have intercepted Gemini, Sagittarius, that is absolutely something I would talk about in those, you know, 30-minute transit readings, or just in general, in any sort of reading. You can always ask me those kinds of questions if you want me to interpret something in your chart specifically. All right, Uranus moving through the first house. So this is a huge start to a new cycle. You've recently come out of your Uranus through the 12th house transit. Now, this has happened probably, you know, maybe pretty recently for late degree Taurus risings, and this is all going to happen at some point for all Gemini risings, no matter what house system you use, you know, during this Uranus and Gemini transit. So this is a real big transition period from one time to another. But with Uranus, it's specifically talking about all these internal changes that have taken place and transformations that have taken place that are now being shown externally, right? Your Uranus, your weirdness, your quirkiness, your uniqueness is now being shown externally. During your Uranus in the 12th house transit that you're probably just coming out of, you might have spent a lot of time expressing yourself privately through technology, but now with Uranus moving into your first house, it's really time to put yourself out there more, your beliefs, your weirdness, your freak flag. This is the whole like, gotta let your freak flag fly sort of transit, Uranus in the first house. You may start feeling more aligned with the collective superconscious is kind of what I say with Uranus. And you may become a leader or a revolutionary in a certain area or field that you've kind of, you know, been meditating on your ideas with while Uranus was in your 12th house. What was now hidden is now being exposed. So this also, I think Uranus can stir up up family secrets as well. So sometimes there can be family secrets that get stirred up, you know, because it's like sudden surprising things that you didn't know, that you didn't expect to ever be told, right? That's Uranus. You're like, I didn't even have an inkling of this. What the hell? You know, that's very also like Uranus going through the 12th house, finding those things out secretly, but not telling anybody. With Uranus going through the first house might be a time that you finally are like, I'm exposing this. Like, for example, I think a great example, since we just talked about Mormonism, is like somebody who really believes in Mormonism while Uranus is going through their 11th house because it's their culture. Somebody while Uranus is in the 12th house start to realize like all the cracks in the foundation and all the family history and all the secrets and all the stuff, but they don't want to say anything. They're not really sure. And then when Uranus transits over their first house, they can't help but live and breathe that they don't agree with Mormonism anymore. I'm just saying this as an example, right? It can go even the other way, whatever. But that I think would be something like, I can't hide this anymore. You know, I've been gay this whole time. Maybe that's very like Uranus in the first house. Coming out of the closet is, I never thought about this, but I bet you there is a big indicator of Uranus being in the 12th house, you know, and realizing you're gay, but doing it behind the scenes, not being very out about it. And then when Uranus goes through your first house saying, fuck this, pride, all that shit, I'm gay, I'm here to stay, whatever the fuck, you know, being very proud and unabashed about it and coming out of the closet, right? 12th house can be quite a literal closet. I remember I heard somebody with like a bunch of 12th house energy be like, yeah, I had to move my bed into the closet because it just felt safer in there. And I was like, okay. That's some 12th house, like, fucking isolation. That's not what we're talking about. Though we're talking about Uranus in the first house. So when conjunct your ascendant, especially when it's exactly conjunct your ascendant, you'll be going through a huge personality shift and a differing outlook on life. Or basically what you've always felt will now be coming out, or it'll be going through that real acceptance of the transformation even. You may feel the tides shifting a little bit more in your direction. And what I mean by that is when I think Uranus is in the 12th house, you can feel very unrelatable potentially to the generation that's going on. But when Uranus is going in the first house, you're like, oh, okay, things are kind of going my way a little bit more. I kind of am agreeing with this, with what the collective feels, and I identify with it. I even maybe look like the stereotype of this generation, right? That can be very like, well, Uranus is going through your first house. You're probably going to be outcasted for the views that you developed in your 12th house because you are being outspoken by them, but you're probably going to stand by them pretty strong and pretty firm, especially if you are a more Uranian person natally. Lots of personality changes, okay? You will not be the person that you were at the beginning of this transit. And yes, that's true for the beginning and end of any Uranus transit, dead ass. But with the first house, it's very literal. It's like, you do not look like you did before. And I know that happens with like 8 years of anything, but you probably go through a lot of phases. You know, this is the time to dye your hair crazy colors, to get a bunch of tattoos, or just to kind of do whatever the counterculture is doing physically, you know, have that be your appearance and the way you come across, you know? So do not set in stone any aesthetic during this time. Don't throw away all your old clothes in one mad rush, you know, in one big manic rush because Uranus is going through your first house. Just put them in boxes and tuck them away because honestly, you'll probably go back to them and then hate them again and then go back to them and hate them again. You know what I mean? So just be open to the phases that life brings you, the new things you're going to be interested in, the new ways that you're expressing yourself, but just be prepared for that to change and ebb and flow, you know, especially if you're watching this when Uranus is going through Gemini. This is really important advice to listen to. Maybe when Uranus was going through a Taurus, it was like a little bit more steady, but I would not stake your claim on any one identity during this time. And just enjoy the phase while it lasts, you know? Uranus can take everything so seriously and so heavy and be like, I am this! And anybody who's not is wrong. Not only are you wrong, you're morally corrupt. And then like 10 months later, they're doing the thing that they said that was morally corrupt. And it's like, ooh, maybe you shouldn't have been so, sticking that claim there. So that's kind of what I'm just saying. That's fine to feel some type of way, but you know, there could just be such a righteousness that happens when Uranus travels through our first house. Yeah, experiment with new looks, try new things, meet new people, start trends, you know, take risks. Freedom of expression is just like highly crucial and the big emphasis during this time. There's going to be a big attitude of like, you can't tell me what to do. You're not my mom, even if you're my mom. What are you, my mom? Definitely time to break free from things that have previously limited you in the past to move forward and break the chains that once binded you. And because of this, you can feel a little outcasted. You can feel like the odd one out. You can feel a little bit more lonely or isolated in some way. But sometimes I do think that Uranus transiting the first house can choose to isolate themselves because they feel as though they don't resonate or relate to anybody. But you don't have to be exactly like the twin of somebody to get along with them. But I do think that Uranus and Gemini in the first house will maybe understand that a little bit more. But also it's like that twin duplicity. So I do think there's this like looking for the good twin and bad twin sort of energy. Twins are going to be on a rampage during this time. I wonder if we're going to be giving birth to more twins. I don't know. You can feel like people judge you for the life decisions you've made, and that people see how different you are from them because of those things. Like that's what isolates you. Like, yeah, self-fulfilling isolation can be very strong with this energy. Your behavior will be a lot more unpredictable. It will be a lot more shocking to others. You'll be a lot harder to peg down and understand. You'll seem a lot more like, I don't know what I'm going to get with you, or that's the action surprised me, and it might even surprise you as well. Honestly, this should be a really empowering energy because you are truly the holder of your own Uranus with it in the first house. What changes do you want to make? What do you want to do with it? Where do you want to steer the world? Where do you want to steer yourself? Like, see where it takes you. And I think this can be a very enjoyable transit as long as with Gemini energy, there is an added emphasis on mental health. So this can bring up some like mental health erraticism and inconsistencies that if you already have some underlying issues, this can bring that out. I'm not trying to scare you, but I'm just saying like this is a time where it's like Gemini risings. Can I say this? If you're on medication, you need to stay on your medication. I don't know. I'm not even like a pro-medication or anti-medication person. Like I feel like cases are individual, but like how do I say that in a nice, appropriate way? Like it's just like oh, there's the fly. There's just a big chance for behavior that's out of your norm or emphasizing the erratic behavior that already exists. Yeah, rebellion for the sake of rebellion is big with this one. Definitely like you might start feeling like ahead of your time or ahead of the trend cycle or like everybody copies you or like you do it first, like that kind of energy for sure. But I will say at the end of the day, you are trending. Gemini rising specifically during this time or whatever time you're watching this, whatever Uranus sign we're in, Gemini, Uranus, that like Gemini risings will be trending. Something about you guys and the way you talk, probably the fact that you talk quickly, you do well with TikTok content, you do well with like short, quippy, funny little things, right? Like you're going to be like very trending and very popular and very like in demand at this time. So have fun with it. Finally, the fact that you're very like multitasky and like funny and like kind of here, there, everywhere, I think this can work to your advantage, honestly. All right, Uranus going through the second house. So coming from the first house, who you are and what you stand for and represent has gone through a huge shift and a huge change, okay? Who you thought you were, you are no longer. The ideas and beliefs, fucking fly. The ideas and belief systems you held during this past Uranus in the first house transit, how they started off was nothing near to what they are now. Now that you let your freak flag fly, now that you've been sort of isolated or crucified for who you are and what you believe, do the items that are around you surround that? Right? And also if you've been so changeable personality-wise, now this might also affect your security. Your maybe, sometimes I think this can be like, on a more negative note, your erratic behavior in the first house caused your security to be upended and caused inconsistency. Now this can be good and this can be bad, this can be neutral, right? This is just what maybe happened. Now that you let your freak flag fly with Uranus going in the first house, it's time to let your lifestyle reflect that with Uranus going through the second house. Now that you speak these strong beliefs, do you make money that aligns with what you believe? You know what I mean? Are you living the life that you've preached for so long? Like logistically is I think what a lot of this has to do with as well. This will really, Uranus in the second house, the easy thing to say, which is true, is that this will really shake up how you earn your money. It's going to be a little inconsistent. It's going to be unpredictable. You're probably going to change how you make money, especially if it doesn't align with your newfound morals, principles, or beliefs that were developed while Uranus was going going through the first house. Job changes, raises, demotions, promotions, firings, layoffs, just, your company going under, it's just some way that you, again, this is how you earn money. This is directly affecting you. The way that you earn money and the way that you receive money will be shaken up by something external, something outside of your forces. And again, if the way you earn money does not align with your morals, it will be shaken up and flipped on its head, and that might be a big reason why you lost your job in the first place. You will have a much more inconsistent income stream. This can be good and bad. If you're somebody that's very open to adaptability and you like the ability of, like, how do I explain it? Like, I kind of like this as well. Like, if you have a set income stream, it can be very limiting, because it's like, well, no matter how good of work I do or how bad of work I do, I'm still being rewarded the same. And that's something that I personally struggle with. And I think maybe with this Uranus transit, this is a good kind of idea to take in. And so with things being inconsistent, it's nice because not always, but there usually is a chance that the harder you work, the more money you make. Even if it's, a little bit inconsistent still, right? Uranus in the second house, like, it's still a little inconsistent, but there's still a potential for it to get more. And like salary jobs, you're capped off. And it's like, well, that's why nothing ever gets better in the world. Anyway, so that's definitely a kind of a mentality to open up to with Uranus going through your second house, is being a little bit more comfortable being on your toes with your finances. This can be a big energy where you go into freelancing, you start working for yourself, you work for a startup company. Startup companies, I think, are very common with like Uranus, specifically a startup tech company, is very common with Uranus in the second house, very literal. But it's just going to be a little bit more inconsistent, but it's all about riding the waves. It's all about going with the flow. You have to know that what goes up will come down and what goes down will come up. And as long as you're ready and prepared for that, this can be a very positive time where there can be, if you're saving correctly and thinking for the future correctly, then this can be a time where I think you can actually make a lot more money. But if you're not being smart and saving for those times where maybe things are a little bit more on the low end, then this is something that you'll really struggle with, the fact of how little forward thinking you are. And with it in Gemini, that may be something that comes into play. Like, yes, there are big potentials for big surprise wins, but there's also big potentials for these little bitty losses. And with Uranus, you might not even notice it's happening until it's already done, because it's like little or chaotic or this or that, or it's like hard to keep up with. Does that make sense? It's not like this person did this thing to me financially. It's like, oh my God, years later, and holy shit, wait, this job has been taking advantage of me financially, and I never noticed, and my income has been so much more chaotic than it needed to be because of all these things, and this paperwork got mixed up and blah, 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 blah. You get what I'm saying? Yeah, do not listen. As a Capricorn, I always am like, this is my MO in life. Do not, but with this energy, please listen. Do not count your chickens before they hatch with this energy. I do not give a shit what you have in your second house or your eighth house. Do not count your chickens before they hatch when Uranus goes through the second house. Like, for example, it could be bigger or it could be less, and both of those have their own complications. I'm getting a big order at my company. That's amazing. All right, we're preparing for this amount. Motherfucker, they ordered this much. Now you have under inventory. Or, they promised all these big things, and then they think we ordered all this inventory. They didn't buy any of it. So do not, I know sometimes we have to make risky decisions, and that's why this is important of a transit to have some money stashed away, because you will be asked to make risky decisions. And a lot of times they can pay off for you with Uranus in the second house, but sometimes they don't. So when they don't, you have to have been prepared for them not to, and been prepared for them to, and been prepared for a random third option that's a curveball that you never expected. Your self-confidence will be shaken up, all right? After spending so much time with Uranus in the first house and feeling so different to everybody, and maybe even being bullied because of it, facing adversity because of it, this affects your self-confidence over time, right? And it makes it a little bit more shaky, makes it a little bit more inconsistent, makes it a little bit more unpredictable. Some days you're on the top of the world, and the other days you're in rock bottom. And it's just a little bit like you kind of got to ride the waves of confidence, and a lot of it probably is financially linked linked up. This can also be a time where you rebel against finances, the idea of money, the idea of traditional ways that you make money. You know, maybe you become a communist or a Marxist or a capitalist, if that's the antithesis of what you were before. Yeah, your morals, principles, and values will just be absolutely shaken and flipped on their head. Really, truly, and honestly, and you can be very strongly convicted. May move less towards materialism and more of a hippie-like approach to finances or items. Now, this doesn't mean that if you have a lot of money that you're going to be broke. Now, if you do have a lot of money and you're afraid of this Uranus transit, here is my advice to you. Invest in whatever this means to you and however you make your money. Invest in new technologies. If you are running a business and you are being a little like me, Capricorn curmudgeon, and there's some new technology that's come up and you're refusing to get on the bandwagon, you are going to lose your money. If there's a new technology that comes up that will make things better, more innovative, try it out, okay? This is a big potential to make money through innovation, innovative thinking, innovative ideas, innovative technology, new innovative ways of doing things. Like if you're wanting to make more money during this time, you need to, and that's why it's like, it might be a winner, like I said, it might be a hit or miss thing, but there's just so much more of a likelihood, especially if you have planets that are going to be conjunct, especially if Uranus is well aspected. This is going to be a really good time to invest in these new things that are coming up and not turn your back on them as much. You know, obviously be careful with that advice, but you know what I'm saying? Like it could even be something as simple as like, oh my God, I've always known that my business that I have, a food truck, needs a TikTok. Like, right? But I hate TikTok, right? You're gonna have to get a fucking TikTok, honey. Like, it'll do better. It'll work. It'll help out. This is time to get one. Like, right? It's that kind of energy. Surprise resources might come up. I also think sometimes because your security might get a shakeup, this can also equal like love as well. You know, the second house does also rule, you know, relationships as far as like our possessions and like who we have kind of like fixed onto. You know, who you thought you were attached to, especially financially or security-wise, that can take a surprise turn as well. Like you may also just rebel against previously held security, and you probably will receive pushback for how you earn money. It'll probably be controversial. You'll probably for some reason get some flack or some shit, but welcome it, because this is definitely like all press is good press. That's like can be very Uranus energy, especially in Gemini. Especially in Gemini. Uranus moving through the third house. So we're coming from the second house. And now that your possessions have been changed and your job security shaken, it's time to shake up your environment and your surroundings. Uranus in the second house can be very stubborn and can sometimes really stick by their beliefs and stick by something solidly for the whole of the transit, especially if you experience this energy in Taurus. This is going to be extra emphasized. Now with Uranus in the third house, all of those previously held things are going to be flipped and shaken and turned on their head. And because your finances have taken such a turn one way or another, your environment, your neighbors, and your neighborhood will change as well to reflect that for better, worse, neutral, or otherwise. And now that you probably earn your money in a more unconventional way, you probably have a more unconventional community or of people around you. Also, I think sometimes maybe Uranus in the second house can indicate like a parent's divorce or something like that, to where, you know, your finances are being shaken up by something that you have no control over, which is very much an outer planet with Uranus. And while Uranus goes into your third house, this is a big potential for there to be split families. That's another big thing. That's a big thing with Uranus in the third house. A big potential for split families, divorces, new marriages, half siblings, secret families being exposed, past families, hidden things being exposed in the family, meeting your sibling for the first time, learning who your dad is for the first time, realizing your dad had a secret other family, right? All that kind of stuff can be very prevalent with Uranus in the third house, honestly. Or you can be doing it. You can have a secret wife. You can have a secret life. You can live a double life. You can have one life at work and one life here. You can have one political opinion here and another political opinion over there. That can be very Uranus in the third house, especially in Gemini. A big thing here with Uranus in the third house is boredom. You're going to find yourself to be a lot more bored than you usually are, and that is going to be a big fight, especially with it in Gemini. If that's what you're going through when you're watching this video, it's going to be a big fight to kind of fight against the boredom that is going on. You're going to need more mental stimulation. You're going to need more avenues of interest. You're going to need to multitask a little bit more, and if not multitask, you're going to need something that you're interested in that's super expansive, you know, that has a lot lot of different worlds or moving pieces or parts or things to learn about, right? And it needs to be this big picture thing that you can, learn about from your room. That's going to be a big, big deal with specifically, honestly, Uranus and Gemini in the third house. You will probably move. Like, you will probably move. I know that, like, come on, it's 8 years, Shaina. Like, everybody's gonna probably move within 8 years. Yeah, well, you're with Uranus in the third house, you're probably gonna move more than once. You're probably gonna move a few times. You're probably gonna move a few times than you'd like to in some weird, untraditional ways and unexpected ways and surprise ways that you're not really interested in. Sometimes. Other times it can be super beneficial. Sometimes you're like, I need a change. I'm moving on up in the world. Let's move someplace new. And then you're like, oh my God, I'm doing so well. We're moving someplace new again. Right? Now, sometimes this can also be like you stay in the same place, but your neighborhood really changes. So let's say like you stay the same, but your whole community gets shaken up and like the town that you once knew it as is not what it is anymore. This used to be this kind of town and now it's this kind of town. We used to be super run down and now we're gentrified. We used to be doing great and now it's a shithole, right? That can be a little bit Uranus in the third house as well. There can even be a new religion that comes to town, dead ass, that like plays a big role in things, or a new cult or thought form or thing along that nature. You might join a cult. You might find a little bit of an odd interest, find a group of like-minded individuals that live off in the wilderness. Like, this is a very like Uranus and Gemini third house transit. Uranus in the third house is not the leader of it though. It's usually more of like a comrade sort of energy. Not saying it's like communist, but I feel like that's a good like word for it, like a cohort amongst the cult, But yeah, you're gonna move a lot, so just like be ready. Like, I'm just like gonna be honest with you, the more adaptable you are, the more ready you are for it, the smoother it'll go and the more you will enjoy it, honestly, because it can be really fun. And sometimes those, sometimes where you are isn't where you're supposed to be, and you need a little bit of a few jolts here, there, and there to get you to where you're supposed to go. Right? Your views and opinions will change drastically and dramatically multiple times, right? You're going to at one point think this and then think that and then think this and then think that. And with Gemini, it's only going to be exacerbated. Like I said, siblings or extended family or immediate family will change. You might even kind of be ostracized at one point from your family or your siblings, or you might have a sibling that is ostracized because of their viewpoints, because of what they believe, because of some sudden chaotic action even, or something they said. That can be true too. New ways of travel. So this is a common placement if you were like a kid and you're like changing schools a bunch because your parents got divorced, and then you're here, there, and everywhere, and then you get your driver's license, and then you get some freedom, and then you get to drive wherever you want, and so you're just kind of like in the neighborhood, kind of going around, knowing all the other people here, there, and everywhere. Like, that is very like Uranus in the third house sort of energy. I've been to that school, I've been to that school, I've been to that school, I know people here, I know people there. But you might even feel like, I know everybody everywhere, but they don't really, really know me. It's just kind of like a network more than anything. But welcome in new ideas, welcome in new clubs, new groups, new courses. If there's something you've always wanted to learn, but you were a little bit unsure or apprehensive, this is the time to sign up for that class, try some kind of new agey class, whatever it is, learn about technology, update your technology, whatever it is. What I also thought was very like Uranus in the third house is expressing yourself through like new creative ways verbally, like especially like, back in the day it would have been like 2010s fan fiction is a very like Uranus in the third house sort of energy to me, which makes sense because I think it's a lot of Scorpio risings. I actually know a Scorpio rising with Uranus and Neptune in the third that was a Tumblr fan fiction writer back in her millennial days. So yeah, that kind of stuff is very much the vibe, but I don't know what it's going to be for Uranus and Gemini because it hasn't happened yet, but it's going to be whatever the version of that is. You're going to get pushed back with your opinions, how you think, and especially your lifestyle, with Uranus in the third house. Breaking out of your shell and becoming more social, new friends or friend groups if you push yourself. Your friendships and community will go through radical changes, and who was once your friends friends will not be who your friends, you know, multiple times throughout this transit, honestly. There is a little bit of like a jumpiness, a restlessness. There is a little bit of like a, you know, also you might kind of end, my dog, he's so cute. You might also like end friendships because they don't agree with your new political opinions. That can also be a big theme as well, or your opinions in whatever way. Just, yeah, a jumpiness, a restlessness. It's, you know, it's giving a little bit of like more of a, you know, I guess I can't say this, but like an ADD, ADHD mind for that time frame. You might be a little bit more distractible, a little bit more, you know, hard to focus. Don't freak out. It is a transit. Unless this is, you know, and if this is triggering something natally, then it is going to bring that out. Like if you're a really third house heavy person in Gemini, again, it's kind of one of those transits where, you know, watch your mental health, make sure that you're, you know, if you do need to take medication, you're on the medication that you're supposed to take. Make sure that you have people sometimes keeping you in check or whatever it is, because this, I'm being honest, if you have any sort of mental health conditions, this transit, especially when it's conjunct your Gemini energy specifically, can exacerbate that. So that is something to be aware of. Now, what I will say is with Uranus, if you can use this to your advantage, like I said, I think a big thing will be is like everybody's going to be talking faster. Everybody's going to be wanting more, even more quippy, short, you know, entertaining content. And that's perfect for the Uranus in the third house mind. So you can be really great at maybe like pumping out content, pumping out this, writing this, doing that, like, right? Like anything new or relevant that has to keep you on your toes. Like you can really be like, this is my next idea. This is my next idea. This is my next idea. So you can be a real asset and you can really know what's trending, know what's popular, know what's going to be happening next. Like there is a similarity there with like what I was saying with Uranus in the first house, just because I think there's like a natural mental relevancy. Like what, instead of Uranus in the first house, it's not how you look that's trending, it's what you think that's trending. Does that make sense? Impulsiveness, I think, is really, really big with this placement. Just like these little daily impulses that you follow when you can't help but go towards, and you might like, you know, so just be aware. Mental confusion or a lack of clarity sometimes can come up. Your ideas may seem too radical and you may slightly alienate others because of this. You can't sit still. You need multiple outlets for focus. You can be very intelligent and smart on many topics, but struggle to pay attention to just one. So try to keep your mind to 2 to 3 topics or 2 to 3 things. If, you know, Gemini's going to do the thing where, yes, I've been saying this recently, like, yes, and I'm saying Gemini because it's Uranus and Gemini in the third house of Gemini. I always say like, yes, Gemini, it is very important that you multitask, but that doesn't mean doing 5, 6, 7 things at once. That means focusing on 2 or 3 max. 2, I think, is a really nice number for Gemini. Have just these 2 different outlets, one creative, one more logical. Usually they need something like that, whatever that means for you. But please stop doing like 17 because you half-ass all of them, right? Exploring new topics or new interests that have a more Uranian edge, new and innovative ways to learn and teaching. Learning and teaching will come up very strongly during this time. Your neighbors and neighborhood will shake up, will enter a drastic change. There can be a lot of themes of estrangement, yeah, random new siblings, all that kind of stuff. And this will especially also show up in lower schooling, as I mentioned. Uranus transiting the 4th house. So we just came from your 3rd house, and now Uranus going to the 4th house. This is a big transitionary time. Why? Because it's hitting one of the angles on your chart, the 1st, 4th, 7th, and 10th. So really pay attention to around the exact time that it hits your 4th house IC angle. It is different for everybody in Placidus. Just because you're a Pisces rising doesn't mean in Placidus that Uranus will hit your 4th house cusp right when it enters Gemini. So pay attention to your specific chart, but that will be a very important time in your life. This will be a transitionary time. You will maybe have some kind of new mindset. What I think it is after changing your mindset so much, seeing so many perspectives, shaking things up, seeing new towns, new places, new people, you know, you probably have like all these complicated family things that happened, right? You kind of know a lot more now, and you're not, in my opinion, I feel like you're not going to fall for the shit you fell for. And you kind of are more latched onto maybe one idea or one thing that you're like, no, this is me, this is who I am. So it's kind of time to really step into that energy at home as well and make your home reflect that, you know? So these changes in your external environment, neighbors, school, siblings, then show up to reflect that in your home. Since having so many Uranian ideas and thoughts, you may feel like you've isolated yourself so much because of these ideas that it's time to stay home and let your freak flag fly there. Yeah, with Uranus in your 4th house, it really does shake up your family and home life. It really does shake up what stability as well you might have thought that you had, especially right as it goes over that 4th house. It can also expose some secrets, some family. It can bring out some surprise things that you never knew about your family, some surprise events, some surprise information, whatever it may be, even some surprise things specifically about yourself. There might be a lot of inner self revelations. Maybe during your Uranus in your 3rd house, I'm gonna be honest, okay, I think this is something that can come up. Maybe during Uranus in the 3rd house, your mental health became a focus. And when Uranus entered your 4th house, you finally got the diagnosis that you've been looking for, and you finally got that solidified. How does your family deal with that? How does your family handle that? I think that can be like a huge, something that can show up as well. Even now you have this really different opinion about things in life. How does your family feel about that? How does your family take to that? That will probably really shake up your relationship with them in the home. Even if your family is your husband or your wife or your kids, right? With Uranus in the 4th house, there can be, again, some home instability, honestly. But more important than that, it's about your roots being upended. It's less like these little movements here, there, everywhere, and more like what you thought, you held solidified is going to be shaken up. I do like Uranus transits, but this one I think is a lot harder, in my personal opinion, than others. Actually, one of the hardest, I think, because we don't want Uranus going through our 4th house. It's just so, the antithesis of the energy we're looking for. In the 4th house, no matter what energy you have, we're looking for some level of security, stability, some feeling of hominess, whatever hominess means to you, some feeling of I belong here. Uranus is the opposite of that. Uranus makes you feel like you don't belong there. Uranus makes you feel like you're the odd one out at home. Uranus makes you feel like you're so different and ostracized from everyone because of the way that you want to live. And it brings, again, instability to your home, your family, your roots, all that kind of stuff. Everything you thought you knew and what you thought you wanted with home and family will absolutely be flipped on its head, and you realize you want something completely different, and that thing will also change a lot too. Yeah, you'll feel isolated from your family potentially, or you just feel like you're kind of pointed out as the different one. Your life speeds up where it should be slow and steady, right? The 4th house, we want slow and steady, but Uranus adds a lot of right? And that's not really what we want to go home to, right? Your home may have new advancements or technology added to it. This is definitely somebody who maybe will, what is I think a real probably prominent energy with this Uranus in the 4th house is buying a house to flip, buying an old house and then renovating it, flipping it, making it new. Adding new technologies at home, being open to more new technologies at home, new advancements to make the home life easier. That's something to be open to welcome in. Maybe you weren't a big computer person, but then when Uranus goes through the 4th house, suddenly you have a laptop and a desktop computer and an iPad. That could be something potentially with Uranus in the 4th house. This is very isolated mad scientist vibes, however that resonates with you and what kind of scientist you are. But there's also a lot of liberation from the past. This is a good time to go to therapy. This is a good time to, the past shit that your family has brought up and these things that you just found out, talk about it with somebody. You can be real, you have a real potential to be liberated from it as well. New memories resurfacing, feeling like you are a physical home representation of your generation. What I mean by that is what's going on in the world directly affects you at home. So what I mean by that is this can be a little overwhelming sometimes. This can be somebody who was, I don't mean to be extreme, I'm not saying it's going to happen to you, but this can be somebody who was affected by the war, right? And their home life was shaken up because of the war directly. It happened in their home, in their neighborhood, or in their community in some way. This is somebody that you know, oh yes, the abortion laws got turned over and this happened first in our state. Like, it could be a good thing. Like, maybe now the stuff is fixed and, you know, oh yay, when that directly affects me, and now now my sister can get an abortion with no fear. I don't know, I'm just making something up. But things like that, like, it will directly affect you at home in your home life, right? Maybe there's even reality TV shows that reflect what it was like in your childhood, or what it's like in your home, and you're like, wow, I never expected to like see this being displayed on television. You may feel a little more disconnected or numb just because you've had to detach to your home life and a little bit of your emotional life as well, so there can be more of a disconnected, detached feeling because of Uranus. There will be lots of shocking internal revelations, emotional detachment to your surroundings. This may even be a coping mechanism. Also, I said the concept of wearing your home on your back. Okay, that's a big thing with Uranus in the 4th house. Like, feeling like you don't really have a home, so your home is yourself, you know? Also, be open to and expect maybe even new radical ways of living. So this is somebody that might, you know, have a van life, or maybe you had this new idea and thought form group that you got together with in the 3rd house, and then you guys moved into a new community and established yourself during Uranus in the 4th house, modernizing your home and space. Lots of people coming in and out of your house. Okay, if you don't resonate with anything that happens, here's something that I think is for sure going to happen. There's just more activity in your home. Like, maybe your kids are getting older and maybe they're bringing all their friends over and they're having sleepovers all the time. And there's this new generations of Gen Alpha iPad kids running out around your house. And you're like, yeah, like, it's not war that's going on around me, but it's this little, like, these kids that are saying skippity toilet all the time. Like, that can be Uranus in the 4th house as well. Like, the generational shifts are at home with you because your kids are getting older. Like, that can be a big way. So you don't have to freak out. Like, that can be a big way. Like, you know, like, I don't know these kids, like, and I'm feeding them. Okay, like, that's Uranus in the 4th house, right? Like, I feel like the odd one out in my own home because I'm the only old person here, you know, everybody's a little kid, you know, that can be Uranus in the 4th house too, right? But, you know, also, no matter what, you're going to need a lot more freedom and independence in the home or in the home life. You'll just need a little bit more space to breathe or to express yourself, right? Uranus transiting through the 5th house. So, I think this is nicer than going to the 4th house. I think the 4th house is kind of hard. And this is a little bit of I would say a little bit more of a breath of fresh air, honestly. No Uranus transit is easy. No transit is easy, but this one is a little bit more lighthearted. So coming from the 4th house, your whole foundation has basically been shaken up and changed many times. So now that you've changed, it's time to express that externally. And it's time to also, I feel like, let loose and have a little bit more fun. I feel like it's kind of going from an introverted to an extroverted change. I mean, no matter what, I think there's a lot of introversion and isolation to Uranus. It's going outside a little bit more. You know, it's time to kind of show off all the hidden talents and abilities that you've accumulated while Uranus has been going through your 4th house. With Uranus going through the 5th house, it's all about having more freedom with fun, more freedom with, you know, unlimited self-expression, letting your freak flag fly. Really, it's one of those placements, again, like Uranus in the 1st house. You know, it's, again, time to get that piercing you always wanted, dye your hair in the way you always wanted, or go on that random date you've always dreamed about, say yes to that thing you never thought you'd say yes to, try this out, try this class out, go to this concert that you've never heard the band, don't know the band of, you know, whatever it may be, right? There's more creative self-expression for sure. Now, you may also feel ostracized for this as well. You may feel very ostracized for the way that you express yourself and the way you creatively showcase yourself. You may feel like nobody understands your art or creativity, except for maybe like an underground few, or for the counterculture, or whatever it may be. So because of that, it can feel a little isolating. You also are looking for something a little bit different in romance. You're looking for something a little bit more unique and offbeat. You're maybe even looking for a different sort of structure to your relationships. You may be looking for an open relationship. You may be looking for a long distance relationship. You may be looking for no relationship, and you just may be looking for being single or just to casually date. Or maybe you're only looking to hang out with your friends or a friend group. That can also come into play really well. Going out with a group of friends, that is I think very commonplace with Uranus in the 5th house. Great time for putting out your creativity through social media and connecting more through groups and communities that way. This is also an energy that will probably have lots of situationships or sudden relationships. This is a big energy where there may be some elopement or a random divorce or a sudden new relationship or a sudden new breakup or a friend breakup or a bunch of new friends, or who knows, things like that. Definitely going to change up. There's going to be endings to relationships, beginnings to relationships, endings again of the same relationship, beginnings again of the same relationship. I'm just kidding, but you know what I mean. You're going to be more unpredictable in love. You're going to be more unpredictable in the way that you express yourself and in creativity. You may jump into something that's normally not your style. You may do something that you normally wouldn't expect yourself to do in relationships. You may have some changes to your aesthetic or some experiments with different aesthetics. Your aesthetic is trending. You know, there's no reason to gatekeep it or get so mad about it or whatever it is. Use it to your advantage. People really like your style. People are really picking up with what you're putting down. People are really interested in your interests, right? Maybe the movies you like become more popular. The TV shows you like become more popular. The musicians you like become more popular. Embrace it and have fun with it. Don't isolate yourself because they don't understand them when they were cool or whatever it is, you know? And also be more open to the countercultures of things, right? Be more open to also like new technologies as forms of self-expression, right? New ways to show off your creativity, new ways to use technology to help advance your creativity, right? You need to be open to all those kinds of things because when you are, there can be a lot of success and a lot of, you know, growth, especially if maybe your Uranus is in your 5th house and trines your midheaven by chance at some point. That is a great time to use technology to boost your creativity forward, get it out there, and propel your career. You're probably going to be more attracted to unconventional people or people that express themselves aesthetically different than you. You may be a little bit more unreliable though in love and creativity. You may be a little bit more detached. You may be a little bit more observant in the way that you show your creativity in love. You may be a little bit more like looking at love and relationships through that glass house again, you know, or the glass wall again, like I keep saying. You may have these strong creative bursts, but you may struggle with long, drawn out, focused creativity. It may be this, a little bit of this, and then a little bit of that, especially with the emphasis of it in Gemini, a little bit of that, a little bit of this, a little bit of that, right? And it can be hard to hunker down and just focus and see one thing through. Uranus can have long-term rewards, I think, but with it in Gemini, it can struggle to keep its focus. Yeah, you like can't decide on one hobby or outlet. You just keep changing a little bit unpredictably. So what I would say is how to manage this is don't overcommit yourself, you know, so don't overcommit yourself to one thing and close yourself off to other options, but don't overcommit yourself to a billion things, and so you don't get to really dive into any of them. You're probably heard me say this already, but Gemini energy, stop focusing on 5 or 6 things, focus on 2 or 3. You don't need to focus on 1, don't need to focus on 6, focus on 2. Have 2 outlets, one logical, one creative. That's what I think Gemini needs. You'll have these random spurts of inspiration. Don't question them. Go with it. You may have a creative expression that is ahead of your time. It may not be understood until years later, decades later, something along those lines. So just because it's not popular now doesn't mean that it won't be popular in the future. There's also a big chance for surprise pregnancy. This is a time where you can be pretty fertile. This can be a time where you don't have sex for years and then you have sex one time and you get pregnant. So just be aware of that with this Uranus in the 5th house transit. If you're hoping for a surprise baby, if you've had some struggles with fertility over the few years, Uranus might actually grant that surprise miracle baby. So that could be super positive if that's something you're struggling with. But if that's not something you're struggling with and you're not looking towards pregnancy, definitely protect yourself because surprise pregnancies can come out of nowhere. If you have children, your children will probably go through some big old changes and phases and be super unpredictable. Maybe they'll be super rebellious, or you might need to parent your kids in a new or revolutionary way. You may need to take creative tactics, or they may learn a little bit differently, so you need to parent them a little bit differently. They may be a little bit different or outcasted, and so you need to stand by them, whatever it may be. Definitely a freedom to act with authenticity so you can be open to the changes that come. This is a fun transit. This can be a really fun transit, but please think through those fun things that might lead to bigger outcomes, because this can be, again, a very unpredictable, random time. I dare you to do this. Okay. Oh yeah, we're gonna do this. Okay. And so please think through those things that are big decisions, but please be more open-minded to new ways of having fun, new ways of enjoying yourself, new friends, new romances. Be open-minded, but also, you definitely need to think through things, because there can be a lot of surprises that come up in the romance and fun department. Speaking of that, affairs can be a very big thing with Uranus in the 5th house. You can be the person having the affair, or the person that is with somebody that has an affair, because it's like an external event that you can't control, outer planet that changes everything. So that's something that's commonplace as well. There can just be a feeling like if you are in a long-term relationship, there can be a feeling of stagnancy and a need to shake it up. This can be somebody that becomes a swinger during this time, or whatever it is, right? So be open-minded, but also be aware that actions have consequences. So are you ready for the long-term consequences of them? And if you are, then hell yeah, Uranus in the 6th house. So coming from the 5th house, what fun, Uranus in the 5th house. Going into the 6th house, not anymore, not fun anymore. Honestly, I'm not that anti-Uranus in the 6th house. I think if you maybe have a little bit of a lackluster chart mentally, if you don't really have anything going on in a good way, in your 3rd, 6th, or 12th house causing mental instability, this can be a placement that is fun and does shake things up. But if you're somebody that has loaded, 3rd, 6th, 12th houses, yeah, this is going to be harder. Because it can really bring out those mental health struggles, honestly, but I'm kind of jumping into it. So basically you had a total freedom of self-expression. You demanded that with Uranus going through the 5th house, and that has now demanded a change in your real life, in your routine, okay? That has now, chaos has entered the chat, truly, and it has blown up what little structure you thought you had with Uranus going to the 6th house. I wrote down 2 examples. I said, let's say you eloped, right? This is what I was warning you about during the end of the 5th house Uranus transit. Let's say you eloped. Wait, it's always going to be like this? This was fun at first, but now, oh my God, this is horrible. My partner is horrible. These rose-tinted, I called Uranus in the 5th house rose-tinted fun glasses, right? That's very Virgo, I feel like, very 6th house way of putting it. Your rose-tinted fun, stupid puns. Your rose-tinted fun glasses are gone, right? This is horrible and you need a change. You didn't expect this chaos to enter your life day in and day out, and you weren't really maybe ready for that. Another example is you had a kid. Let's be honest. And you were like, wait, this thing's still around, and now they're in school, and I have to drive them everywhere and chauffeur them all over the place. You know what I mean? Now, this can be something that to be embraced if, you thought through these things and you're like, this is what I wanted. I knew my schedule would be shaken up because of this, and I welcomed that, and I am ready to be on my toes, and I'm ready for that adjustment. I need that. Maybe you have a 6th house that's just been stuck doing the same boring thing day in and day out, and you're like, my God, no, I needed a change. I needed a little kid, throwing my life around. I embrace that. Then this can be a really rewarding transit. But if you're somebody that's wanting complete peace and solace in your day-to-day life, and you want everything to stay the same, and you're a very Taurus personality type, for example, this is something that you're probably going to really struggle with. With Uranus in the 6th house, there are changes and disruptions to your routine. You can struggle to keep focused and stay on task. You definitely will need a shift in your daily routine. You'll need to make a lot of changes. If you're somebody that used to be able to do the same thing day in and day out, with this change, that's something that you might struggle with. You might struggle with doing the same thing that you've done every day, day in and day out, that you used to not have any trouble with. Now, all of a sudden, you need a change. Maybe you had a job for 30 years and you had no troubles doing it day in and day out. When Uranus goes through your 6th house, you'll need some kind of a change. Now, that doesn't always mean that you'll wind up doing something different. So if you work in the printer industry, doesn't always mean you're gonna change, out of the printer industry, but you'll need some kind of environment shift or change in the very least. You'll need to get a new job or working with new coworkers, working with a new boss, working in a new office, working in a new environment. There will need to be some shift and change that occurs, even if that shift and change isn't the baseline thing of what you're doing. It can also change what it is that you want to do every day as well. Everything that kept you stable before might be just the thing that you rebel against. There can also be a big change in diet, like again, change in lifestyle routine. Even like there can be honestly as well like surprise health changes, new ailments or illnesses that come up that seemingly come out of nowhere. This can affect you, this can affect other people. So that is something, you know, there's nothing you can really do about it. Just need to be prepared, you need to be adaptable. It might even be something as simple as now, if there is some kind of new ailment or illness that comes up in you or the people around you, my biggest thing that I would recommend during Uranus in the 6th house is to welcome in new alternative forms of medicine or new alternative forms of treatment. Typically with Uranus in the 6th house, going the traditional way does not work. You maybe will need to heal it metaphysically. You maybe need to heal it through a new alternative way. Maybe you need to change your routine and that's how you need to heal it. Maybe you need to heal it emotionally. You need to go to therapy. Maybe there's this new experimental way that there's new medicine. Try that. Maybe you go to a nutritionist, right? It's better to, or maybe there's like maybe it's a very traditional, maybe you go the very traditional doctor hospital route, but they're like, oh, there are 2 options to go down. There's this one that we've done a billion times before, but it's not the best. But there's this new one that there's not as much data about. I would try the new one. I would at least give it a shot, unless it's something like, I'm not trying to say like, be really scared. If it's really something that's scaring you and something that you don't want to do, like make your own decisions. But I'm just saying that would be something to be open to and to try. If you keep trying the same thing, no matter what it is, with Uranus in the 6th house, you're not going to get a new result. Like, you need to shake it up, right? Unpredictable changes to your schedule, so maybe you're planning a trip during that week and then it gets changed. Maybe you thought maybe you always had shifts during the daytime and now you're working in the nighttime. Maybe your partner always, worked Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and now they're working Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and it changes everything. It changes your routine. Maybe your partner's has to move somewhere because of their job, and so you're moving with them. Like, it's just the day-to-day, you kind of are staying on your toes. You're a little bit unpredictable, and people might also judge you for how you go about your day-to-day life and how you go about your day-to-day routine. You might feel very ostracized because of it. Like, let's say, for example, let's say you have a job and you're more of a freelancer or you're more self-employed, but let's say you make a good amount of money. With Uranus in the 6th house, it can be frustrating because maybe you don't have the typical paperwork that everybody needs, but you make a lot of money, but people might judge you because the way you work and how you operate is just different to them, so it's not understood on taxes, or it's not understood in paperwork, or whatever it may be. You might also be a little bit more nervous, a little bit more anxious. You may need to kind of be more aware of your nervous system during this time. I keep on hearing the phrase nervous system coming up. I don't know why. I've never heard it before. Just be more aware of your nervous system. Be more aware of like the ups and downs and the chaos and the this and the that and the fight or flight mode. You need to treat it with more extra care. Again, there might be some alternative ways to heal this. Be more open to new job opportunities, innovative health ideas, as I said, innovative ways to make your life and schedule easier, like new technologies that make your life easier, new technologies that make your schedule easier, make scheduling easier, new and innovative ways to operate systems and, functions in the workplace, just new ways to update your daily routine is going to be really good and can be very positive for you and can be very relevant to you. You need to answer to your own internal rhythm rather than the expectation of society's rhythm. If your schedule's a little bit off and you do your best work at night during this time, then do your best work at night. Like, don't feel obligated to society's schedule is what I mean. You may really struggle with having a boss, or you may just in general struggle, depending on your natal placements. If you're somebody that doesn't struggle with being told what to do, with Uranus moving through your 6th house, you probably will become somebody that struggles with being told what to do. Probably because you think you're stupid, you don't know what you're talking about, like, why would I just do what you tell me to do just because you say so, right? This can be a real rebellious energy in that way. Also, there can be inconsistent energy spurts. Okay, so sometimes you can work tirelessly and endlessly and be super productive, while other times you may super wildly procrastinate and struggle to get anything done. So it can be a little inconsistent. You kind of just have to be ready to go with the chaos of it all and go with the flow. The way you think and process information will change. The way you go about your day-to-day life, your schedule and routine will change and go through many changes. But yes, now let's move to the other half of the houses and let's go into Uranus in the 7th house. So this is another one of those times, because the 7th house is an angular house, that this is a big transitionary period. Yes, every transition from one house to another is a big deal when it comes to outer planets that move this slowly. But when it goes from one quadrant of the chart to another, it is just a real big shift. So we're going from, especially depending on your age, if you have been alive for Uranus going through your 1st and 6th house, this is huge, because this is going from Uranus affecting your internal life for a long period of time to now it is affecting your external life. And so there's just a big difference. Uranus no longer shows up quite as personally to you as it has before, which makes sense because we're kicking off with the 7th house, the house of the other. So already it's more external, right? Does that make sense? Before it was your health, your daily routine. Now Uranus is showing up in the form of others, right? So coming from Uranus in the 6th house, your internal life and structure was really shaken up. Like I said, maybe you felt restless or especially bored during this transit. Maybe you changed jobs or routines a lot. Your health was shaken up and changed. Maybe you got some new diagnoses that you didn't know about before. The way you think and process information has changed. It's just like I said, it's a big transformation. So now you need a partner that can properly cohabitate with you, your newfound routine, your newfound job. Relationships become a focus, but it's not the kind of focus that you're used to. You want something very different out of a relationship, or you want something very different out of the person that you're in a relationship with. Relationships will look very untraditional. This is relationships of all kinds, not just romantic. And with Uranus in the 7th house, it's specifically an emphasis on not just romantic. With Uranus in the 7th house, there's more of a want for friendships, for camaraderie, for groups, being around groups and people and socializing and all that kind of stuff. And if you're looking for a relationship, then you're looking for either an unconventional relationship. This can sometimes bring in an open relationship or a polyamorous relationship, a long distance relationship, but especially what is also common is a relationship between people of 2 different backgrounds or cultures or races or ethnicities, or especially financial backgrounds can also be a big thing. Different countries, I don't know, whatever it may be. There's different religions. Did I say that? There can just be something that is very different or unique to them than in comparison to you. Or there's something very different and unique about them in comparison to everybody else that you're around. So maybe you've always spent your life around a bunch of type A people, and for the first time you're dating somebody type B. Like, it can also show up like that, if that makes sense. It's just, there's some kind of feeling of this person or these people. If you're dating somebody, there's a feeling of this person's very different to me. I can learn a lot through them. They can expose me to different ways of thinking. They can expose me to lesser known things that a lot of people aren't sure of or don't know about. But there can also be something a little bit distant or detached from all of your relationships. Maybe you feel like you're struggling to really fully fall in love with somebody. Maybe you feel like you might intellectually fall in love with them. Like, okay, this makes sense. A plus B equals C, but you might struggle to really pour your heart and soul over to them. You may keep people, not just romantic relationships, but just people in general, at more of an arm's length. You may feel so different to anybody, then you may struggle to approach people. You may struggle feeling comfortable, being in a group of people sometimes, even though that's what you really want to be around, because you feel like the odd one out there. You feel like you're doing things differently than everybody else that you don't realize you're doing. This can even be a time where you move to a different country or a different culture or something along those lines, and you're the odd one out because nobody knows your culture, nobody resonates with your culture, like people don't understand why you're doing the things you're doing, and so and you're dating somebody, no matter what, you're going to date somebody of a different culture, and that can be overwhelming for a lot of reasons, you know? Definitely lots of unpredictable events occurring around relationships. This is another strong indicator of a divorce, of a separation, of a breakup, of a surprise new marriage, of an elopement, of somebody you know from your past getting married, of a parent getting married that you didn't expect to get married, of somebody breaking up with you that you didn't expect to break up with you. This can also point to friendship breakups. Uranus is a big friendship energy. A friendship breakup, a breakup with a community, a breakup with a lot of people amongst a community that you once thought were your friends, and you're just going to feel very outcasted. You're probably going to wind up making friends more with the outcasted, with the weird kids, the kids that don't get it, that are misunderstood. You know, misunderstood will be a big theme. Everybody around you is misunderstood. They're misunderstood. They're misunderstood. You're misunderstanding them. I'm misunderstanding them. I don't understand myself. Blah, 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 right? It may feel hard to rely on anyone in any sort of relationship during this time. Things can change so fast. You can become unpredictable. You can change your mind. They can change their mind. They can become erratic and unpredictable, and then sudden things happen that you would never expect. This is a transit that a lot of Scorpio risings have been going through with this Uranus and Taurus transit, and this is a transit that Sagittarius risings will be going through coming up, because, you know, kind of no matter what, the two houses that stay the same in Placidus when you have a rising sign are the first house and seventh house. So with Scorpio risings going through it, they might have had a partner that they found to be very stable and secure just up and leave, you know? Now with Sagittarius risings, they already can bring a lot of instability to their relationships, and they can go for people that are very unstable and unpredictable, you know, even more so with that Gemini energy. And so this is going to only add more to that. I am scared for us, anybody that's not a Sagittarius rising man. I am very nervous about with Uranus going through their seventh house. I do feel like they already have a strong unpredictability. And also I do feel like this is something that can bring out and expose pedophiles. Like genuinely, I do think that there are some indicators with Sagittarius risings of being attracted to a lot of younger people. You know, it's not just Gemini in the seventh house, but just in general. Now, I'm not trying to like say if you're like a normal Sagittarius rising person watching this video, I'm not saying you're all of a sudden going to be attracted to something that you're absolutely not attracted to, because that's not what I'm saying. But I do think that, but I'm just saying, like, if there's some sketchy men out there with Uranus going through their seventh house in Gemini, I think that this can exacerbate their sketchy behaviors and their shittiness in relationships and their creepy attraction to youth and all that kind of stuff, and gaslighting and unpredictability and divorces. Like, if you have a Sagittarius rising parent, they're probably going to get divorced in the next 7 years, if that's ever been an inkling of what you think might happen. Not saying that's going to happen to every single Sagittarius rising, but you will go through like unpredictable shakeups, and you'll be attracted to people or things that you didn't expect to be attracted to, and there will be a lot of people coming in and out of your life. If a relationship is past its prime, Uranus will come in and shake things up and confront the issues. If you do not intellectually, especially align with somebody during this time, Uranus is going to make sure that you discard the relationship. If your higher beliefs or your viewpoints, your political ideology, your morals, or your principles, or whatever you want to call them, if those do not line up with the people that you are surrounding yourself with, those people will be eradicated from your life, and you will be eradicated from theirs just the same. So that is something to keep in mind. It's all about finding your tribe, finding your people, right? Especially with that Gemini energy, finding people with similar ideas, thought forms, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, themes in general of having such different opinions than your friends or colleagues will come up. Strong element of elopement or divorce. May have a lot of friendship breakups, but there's a huge potential, more than there is to bring in like a long-term committed relationship. There's huge potential to bring in friendship. friendship, camaraderie. And especially if you do work that is client-based, this is fantastic. This is going to bring in a lot of new clients, a lot of maybe younger clients, which can be a very good, a lot of Sagittarius risings are entrepreneurial type people. So if you're wanting to be a Sagittarius rising that's wanting to freelance or bring in clients, especially if you're younger, this is a positive way this can enter in. Really talk to the youth crowd, talk to the younger crowd, be relatable, especially if you're a younger Sagittarius rising. Don't be afraid of the fact that you're younger. Embrace it. People will find it relatable and they will like it. And this is a great way to bring in clientele. But do you understand now why I said earlier, if you are somebody that in your natal chart, you are of nefarious ways, this can be exploited and gaslit. But if your natal chart, you're not that person and you're like, no, I'm literally just like a girl's girl and I'm trying to help people invest or something, I don't know, right? Then that is something that is like going to be so beneficial that most people are going to not understand and roll their eyes at, but everybody's going to be like clients will be knocking at your door because they find you relatable, even though you might ostracize yourself from another giant clientele base. Like if you're a real estate agent, advertise to people your age, your generation, right? Or if you're older even, advertise to your generation, but in a more relevant way, using technology as well to meet people. Using technology to meet people is huge with this transit. Meeting online communities, meeting online friends, meeting people online and meeting up with them in real life. That's a big theme. What you want from a relationship or partner will change drastically. You may need more space from people as well. More space from people than normal. Not in as much of an emotional way, but you may just want or require more of your physical space more. This is a common placement for somebody to be like, oh, I need my own room now, or oh, I love this person, but I don't want to live with them anymore, or I love this person, but only as a friend, something along those lines. You will not listen to what people say or what they tell you to do or what they tell you to believe, just in general, but especially in relationships or friendships. You're going to say, this is how I feel and this is what I'm doing and I'm not listening to you because this is what it is. You can be highly influential to others during this time. Your opinions will probably be parroted or mimicked from with those around you. And you might actually even secretly parrot or mimic the ideas of others around you, make it your own, parrot or mimic it, be pissed off when other people do the same. There's going to be a big chance for therapy, therapists, psychology, a focus on other people, a focus on why people do the things that they do, why people are who they are, feeling like you're observing others through a glass wall rather than living with them or amongst them. You're much more observant towards the actions of others. The other way this can go is you may even feel like your friends are too weird for you sometimes and they embarrass you. And there can be a real judgmental feeling sometimes that you subconsciously place towards others, where it's this kind of idea where I'm weird and you're weird, but you're not my kind of weird, What to really enter in during this time is relationships based on friendship, camaraderie, and equality. Starting a new business partnership is very common with this energy. This is, like I said, great for networking, all that kind of stuff. Now, ladies, okay, everyone, listen. If you're looking for long-term commitment, if that's what you're looking for in a relationship, that's your number one priority, I would suggest you not to date Sagittarius risings during this time. All right? I'm sorry. Don't hate me, Sagittarius risings, for saying that, but it is a little true right now. I'm not saying don't have fun with them, go out with them, have fun with them, go be friends with them, experience things with them, one night stand, whatever you want to do is all fine and good and dandy, but I would not recommend catching feelings for them right now. I'm being honest, or at least when Uranus is going through their 7th house, depending on what degree of a Sagittarius rising they are. And if you do fall for them, be ready to be adaptable. You need to be very adaptable. Don't compromise yourself, though. So if you think my description of Uranus in the 7th house seems extreme, actually, funny enough, I just realized I have an anecdote. So I know this couple that they met at the end of 2018. One is a Scorpio rising, one is a Libra rising. They met right when Uranus went into Taurus. Uranus was going through, the Scorpio rising 7th house and the Libra risings, part of the 7th house, part of the 8th house. And basically during this time, it was like a whirlwind thing and it was so random. random, and they met through friends, and then they basically, they got married within, I think, 2 years of meeting each other, and built this whole life together, and did all this stuff. And then recently, the Libra rising, whose Uranus is in the 8th house, came home, and the Scorpio rising, whose Uranus is in the 7th house, had taken all of their things and left and never come back. Filed divorce papers, just up and left. And just left the Libra rising with all the 8th house stuff, right? Where they're trying to learn how to be alone and single for the first time, almost basically their whole life, since they were a child, because they're Libra rising, that, Libra risings love to chronically be in monogamous relationships. So very Uranus in the 8th house experience. So I just thought that story was kind of a perfect segue to kind of differentiate, but see the similarities nonetheless of Uranus in the 7th house and 8th house, and also to prove that, yeah, guys, sometimes it really is this literal and this extreme. Like, I'm not trying to scare you, but I'm just saying, like, I'm not just pulling this shit out of my ass or saying it for no reason. And I actually forgot about that story until I just took a bathroom break, and I was like, oh my God, this is what I just said. And then I did the math, and I was like, oh my God. So yeah, it's Uranus going through the 8th house. So coming from the 7th house, now that your interpersonal relationships have been shaken up, how you view intimacy has been shaken up as well, and will be shaken up as well, because Uranus is going through your 8th house. After being very social and unpredictable and made to feel like the odd one out, you may feel like you want to isolate yourself a little bit more and just discover the weirdness within yourself, fully alone, sort of like dancing like nobody's watching in your own home, in your own head, in your own life, in your own world, right? I actually have Uranus in the 8th house natally, and I would actually say that I like this placement. Now, obviously, it's a complicated relationship that you have with any 8th house placement, and there are some real drawbacks, but I think out of all of the 8th house energies, this is one that if I were to have an 8th house planet, this would be one of the one that I'd say, I'll go with this one in my personal extraordinarily biased opinion. So if you're entering the Uranus in the 8th house transit, or you're going through it and you're nervous, especially maybe you're nervous about maybe with the story I just said, I actually don't think you need to be. I think it's something as somebody who has this natally to be embraced and to be enjoyed, because I think it can be a super interesting transit for you yourself to experience. So it's just basically all about seeking the depths of your weirdness, is like, I think in a good way. Now, it can also point to, obviously people love to talk about the 8th house, right? Changes in other people's money, changes in joint finances, taxes, right? Divorces, filing legal agreements, court cases, all that kind of like legal, tax, other people's money stuff. Yes, that will get really shaken up. That will be very unpredictable. That will be just something that what you don't expect will happen. So there can be real big changes. Like there can be a sudden death that occurs that you really don't expect, and the way that the things are handled afterwards can be like shocking and unsettling and surprising and like chaotic. So you definitely need to stay focused in the settling of any deeds. Read everything twice. Be very thorough. You may be like, oh, I don't need to take this to court. I would recommend it with Uranus going through your 8th house. And don't be surprised also if somebody else takes you to court out of a surprise sudden thing that you didn't even know, right? I'm always afraid of getting some random thing in the mail that's going to tell me I'm going to jail. Like, I don't know. And I'm like, I don't even know what this is. Like, I feel like that's like Uranus in the 8th house a little bit sometimes. Now, in the other vein, this also has to do with a lot of like intimacy, right? It also has to do with like sexual stuff and true sexual desires, or the depth of just kind of like that. I mean, it's, Uranus in the 5th house is like fun, sex. Uranus in the 8th house is like deep intimacy. But with Uranus going through the 8th house, it doesn't, I think it kind of makes intimacy a little less intimate. I think it makes it a little bit more playful, a little bit more chaotic, a little bit more fun, a little bit more random, a little bit more unpredictable, a little bit more, you want to shake things up, you want to try things new. You may not be as attached to intimacy in maybe the way everyone else is. This can be a time where maybe you have more casual sexual encounters, kind of similar with Uranus in the 5th house. Your situationships that you have can get really intense and can get really 8th housey, even though there's this still like keeping you at arm's length sort of quality. And yes, this can be a time where, you know, weird sexual stuff that's been hidden from you for a long time, you know, those desires can come out and you might want to act upon them, but you may feel like you really struggle to because you may feel ashamed, or you may feel like they're weird, or they're not like aligned with the community that you have or something, or they're not aligned with your usual way that you are. There can be, in my opinion, a lot of like gender bending with Uranus in the 8th house. Sure, with Uranus in the 7th house too. I think that it can be sometimes challenging because things that are taboo in people's lives suddenly become taboo in your life too, and it may be hard if you have a little bit more of a traditional 8th house. Now with 8th house in Gemini, this is going to be extra fun, extra experimental, extra curious. You know, Scorpio risings are not to be trusted during this time. They can really play quite the intellectual mind game right now, I will be honest, but they can be really fun to experiment. They can be really fun to talk to share ideas with. They may be more open to talking about the taboo, discussing the politically taboo, discussing whatever taboo stuff comes up. It's basically all I think about, like embracing the weird inner corners of your brain, but there can also be a lot of isolation because of feeling like you're too taboo or feeling like you're too misunderstood. Maybe sometimes you can even bring other people, or you can bring unexpected chaos and turbulence into each other's lives, because it's like Uranus is like friendships and 8th house is turbulence and chaos. And so is Uranus. It might not be you that's going through a loss or a death. It might just be a friend or somebody you know or something along those lines that's going through it as well. Unexpected changes of inheritance. You may gain a bunch of money and then lose a bunch of money. You know, you may have an unexpected inheritance that you didn't know about. Then you may lose that unexpected inheritance that you didn't even know about. And then you may gain it back. Like, who knows? You know, again, this is another one of like, don't count your financial chickens before they hatch. Don't count your inheritance chickens before they hatch, because things can go better or worse than you might expect. There may be some new mental health conditions. If you get diagnosed, it might be about something taboo or something a little bit more on the fringes or more on the counterculture of the thing that you get diagnosed for. It might be a little bit more, emphasis on the taboo or hidden. It may be something that's been hidden for a really, really long time that's now being triggered and is coming out. You may feel isolated because of how taboo you are, and your opinions about the occult and taboo can be very strange and can feel very misunderstood by people. Shared resources, divorces, court situations can go different ways than you'd expect, both good and bad. There can be an uncertainty towards intimate relationships. You may be a little bit cautious to get too close to anybody. There may be a rebellion as well against normal relationships. Your relationship to power may be a little bit like holier than thou during this time. Like you know how to handle power better than anybody else because you are emotionally detached to it and look at it from a logistical perspective, right? You know, there can be also some emotional detachment to the taboo matter. Like I can definitely talk about some deeper, more intense topics and probably come across very emotionally detached to them or insensitive. And I definitely think, obviously that's a part of my Capricorn energy, but I think a big, big role in that specifically, like true crime astrology, for example, I think is a very Uranus in the 8th house thing. Erratic and unpredictable psychic experiences. So be more open to what the underworld is telling you. Be more open to random strokes of insight. Be more open to occult little subgenres or secret. Maybe you want to study more about secret societies or occult things of that nature. Like I love cults. I'm obsessed with them. They're so interesting, right? Random new funds or money may pop up, especially through things like in the mail or something. Like you might randomly get a bunch of money in the mail, or you might randomly owe a bunch of money in the mail. You might randomly inherit a bunch of money. You might randomly owe a bunch of money in taxes. So just be ready. I'm always afraid of all that stuff. Uranus in the 9th house. Coming from the 8th house, your deep inner beliefs have been awoken, okay? Now that you've accepted your weirdness, since it's been going on through the 8th house, you've accepted your weirdness internally and hid it away from the public, but now that Uranus is going through the 9th house, it's time to put it out there and explore and discover more places and people and things like you and like it. With Uranus in the 9th house, this is a really fun transit. You know, I've had Uranus transits 8th through 11th, and I actually really like all of them. You know, I have complaints about all of them, but I definitely think they're, in my opinion, some of the funnest Uranus transits. And because they're higher up towards the chart, I think it kind of, Uranus does better up there, in my opinion, because it's not shaking your core foundation. It's just shaking like your higher beliefs, your inner self, your inner intuition, your, you know, it's on a more external scale, you know, which is, I think, nicer, or at least maybe makes Uranus a little bit happier, but I don't know. That's my bias, so I'm purely saying that's totally my bias. You can let me know your experience with your Uranus transits and how you feel about them. But yes, with Uranus in the 9th house, you will definitely go through a change of belief systems, or a change of many belief systems. Actually, you know what's interesting now that I think about it is when I was going through my Uranus in the 9th house transit, I really enjoyed, I've said this a billion times, I was raised Jewish. I really enjoyed being raised Jewish for the cultural Uranian 9th house aspect of it. There was a lot of like fun creative things we got to do and got to learn language and all that stuff. I really liked the culture and tradition aspect of it as well. I remember thinking when I was growing up, it's like, I'm gonna raise my, like when I have a kid, I would always think like, am I going to raise them Jewish? And I was like, I don't think so. Like I liked learning the Jewish perspective, but I struggled with the fact that that was the only one I knew. And so I was like, oh, you know, when I'm older and when I have my kids, I'm going to raise them in every single church, and I want them to know everything, and then I want them to decide which religion is theirs and which one they like the most, and you know, we need to learn about all of them. Like that was like a big thing that I felt when I was younger, which I feel like is a very like Uranus in the 9th house sort of attitude about it. Definitely you will go through a lot of changes in your belief system, like multiple times, religion or whatever it may be. Also, you might be a part of a religion that, or a belief system or a political party, whatever it is, that's a little bit more underground or a little bit less popular in your area, or a little bit lesser known or more misunderstood than what is the majority as well. There can be a change in where you want to live and where you see your life headed as well. Like maybe this is a time where usually when people go through Uranus in the 9th house, I'm like, you've been wanting to move. And they're like, yeah. Rare that they don't say that. If they don't say that, then it's definitely something that has to do with like maybe strong 4th house transits or progress chart transits. But I would say for the most part, during your Uranus in the 9th house transit, you will want to move, or you will want to travel more. You will want to see what's out there more. You will want to go out more, discover more, you know, take this trip, take that road trip, go here on the plane, go here. You know, honestly, I remember, actually I started this transit at age 5, and I distinctly remember being on my first plane when I was 5. So just when Uranus hit over the 9th house, I was only going to, you know, a few states away, but I still went on my first plane when I was pretty young. I might have been on a plane ride like when I was like a baby, but it was the first one I remembered. And I remember being really open to it, really excited about it, not scared at all, which I feel like is a very like Uranus in the 9th house sort of energy. It's much more of like a daredevil, not really like sporty, but it's like adventurous. Like I was not a sporty kid, but I was around a lot of sporty people, and I was very adventurous and willing to try things, even if I was bad at it. And I do think probably maybe Uranus in the 9th house and my Venus in Sagittarius probably had a handle in that sort of like openness to trying or failing or something new. I was just anything new, you know? You need to be open to being adaptable politically, and you need to be open to being adaptable spiritually. Again, go with the flow is very much this kind of energy. You know, I will say I did not move at all during my Uranus in the 9th house transit, but I did go back and forth all the time growing up, endlessly from LA to Vegas. My mom did too. It was like constant. I do think that that made us have this like wanderlust energy, you know, and it always felt like whenever we'd go to Vegas, like we didn't really want to be there. It was just where we were, you know. And so even though I didn't move, if my mom would have said that we were moving to California, my ass would have packed my bags and gone. In fact, my mom did do that in 8th grade. She said, we're going to move to California this year. And I said, no doubt about that, let's go. So definitely, like, even if, you know, it's out of my control, it was Uranus, I didn't get to choose where I lived, but, you know, whenever it was talked about, I was like open, like, let's ditch this banana stand, motherfucker, like, there ain't no money in this one. I'm just kidding. I keep on bringing up Arrested Development. Higher education comes up as well, but it will be unpredictable and erratic. You may change schools multiple times. If you go to college, you might change colleges. If you might change majors multiple times within the same college. You may even stop and start college, all that kind of stuff. Now, obviously, this didn't line up with the time frame that I was in college, but I did go to, you know, in that age range, I had a lot of those like accelerated gate classes, which I think can be kind of like representative. So maybe like if you were in high school, like maybe you took a bunch of, what the fuck are those classes called? The AP, maybe you're taking like AP classes where it's like you get the college credit. That could even be something with Uranus in the 9th house. Maybe you start college younger, maybe you graduate sooner, maybe you're in more advanced classes, maybe you're taking weird subjects, or I always had weird history teachers during this time that were very revolutionary. So that can be also a theme as well, like revolutionary teachers. Just the ideas were very progressive, even in 5th grade, which is very Uranus in the 9th house. So be open to like learning something new, learning something that you wouldn't normally expect, learning something, you know, being in a course just because of a really interesting teacher. Like maybe that's not that bad with this transit, honestly. You may want to study something weird, unique, or new. Be open, again, to new technologies or new ways of travel. Be open to studying the human condition, and things like sociology and pattern recognition can be very strong at this point. Again, unexpected experiences with the law or courts, probably more around freedom or impulsive actions, especially if you're older. This can be a real like impulsive time where you do not think through a lot of things, and all this chaos comes and all this unpredictability comes. You know, gambling and impulsive actions can definitely be on the rise. Big wins, big losses, little wins, little losses, constant little wins and little losses that don't equate to anything at all might even be sometimes the energy. Up and leaving and running away from something stable is very common as well. Extended family comes up. Hi, honey. Family that lives in different countries comes up. Like maybe you'll travel to different countries to meet your family or your extended family. Maybe you'll marry somebody and they'll have a family in a different country and you'll go and meet them. Maybe that will come up. And if that doesn't come up, in-laws can be a little bit erratic or unpredictable sometimes. Like maybe you'll have a mother-in-law that's super unpredictable. Her belief system really impacts your life in the day-to-day for some reason, right? Something like that. Just in general, dogmatic beliefs really does come up with Uranus in the 9th house. You know what? When I was really little, I remember being 7 years old and being like, Mom, Dad, like, I don't like that my grandparents get me McDonald's. That's unhealthy, and I don't want to support their corporation anymore because they're bad for America. Like, I was like on one. And I was like, if you buy me McDonald's, I'm not going to eat it. And I was 7, and I remember distinctly being in the car and I held that belief until this day. I mean, I don't hold it as strongly as I did when Uranus was in my 9th house. I was like so strong about it. Now I'll like maybe eat a fry from McDonald's. No. I was so anti-fast food, especially. For some reason, that's what got it from me as a kid. So yeah, dogmatic beliefs. I mean, it's going to show up in a kid different than it shows up in an adult, of course. Beliefs that isolate you from the mass population. You may feel isolated for what you think and feel, that you must move somewhere else or join a group or commune that resonates with your beliefs. Also, another thing is, like I said, there's, I think, a lot of like risk and gambling involved with the 9th house, especially with Uranus in the 9th house. So, you know, during this time was when my parents were still in like, when there were still showgirls in Vegas, and my parents were still involved in like the height of the shows. You know, my mom's showgirl friends, I knew, you know, everybody I knew was a showgirl, was a performer, was a drummer, was a athlete, was like, was some kind of circus act, like very, like their things were very eclectic, you know? You know, my mom would go out of town for conventions, very Uranus in the 9th house, a very like new modern thing, always with like new modern technology, and she would have new technology for her jobs and stuff. Also, something that I also felt like was Uranus in the 9th house is I do think there's more of like being more open to partying and that way, and like neighborhood parties and stuff. Like when I was younger, my neighbors would always host these parties, and it was very like adult ran because it was in the 9th house. And they would all like get together and drink, and it was very like American 4th of July parties with fireworks and grilling and above ground pools in the backyard, like very American. But what I thought about it was very Uranus in the ninth house for them to openly drink in front of us, to be drunk sometimes in front of us. It was never that big of a deal. And it, you know, I don't have any planets that it triggered or any bad things that happened because of it, but it was something that was very like open that I don't know if like as many kids grew up with that. So again, there's just more of like an openness, a funness, a free spiritedness to this energy, which can be really nice. All right, now we are getting into Uranus moving into the 10th house. So this is another one of those big transitionary times when the Uranus moves from your 9th house on top of your midheaven to your 10th house. That is a big shift because again, it's going on top of another one of the angular house cusps. Basically with Uranus in the 9th house, you found all these new belief systems or religions, or you moved to a new town, or you moved to a new country, or whatever it may be. But now it's time to establish yourself, okay? Establish yourself with this newfound sort of unique perspective on life. Okay, things have been really shaky and unpredictable for you in your belief system, and now your unstable career is reflecting that, you know? Now that you have a belief system you feel really strong about, it's time to incorporate that into your job. Now that you have these very strong, higher beliefs, higher Uranian beliefs, does your job or career or life aspirations reflect those beliefs, right? Some reassessment is in order. Your job and career will probably take many changes and shifts and turns during this time. Be ready for your legacy to be absolutely flipped on its head. This is not a time for long-term planning. This is a time for adaptability. Anything that does not align with your higher beliefs will be tossed out because it does not serve you in the long run with Uranus moving through your 10th house, your legacy house, right? What you thought you would do when you were grown up, if you're going through this transit, is going to be very different. And if you're a young kid and you have this transit and you're trying to figure out what you want to do when you're older, this is going to go through a lot of changes. It's going to flip on its head many times. Also, what's interesting is when Uranus was going through my 10th house, you may think, like, I was young. When it left my 10th house was right when I was going off to college. When Uranus entered my 10th house, I'm pretty sure it was like right around when I was like 13, if I'm not mistaken. And you may think like, how can you have a 10th house transit when you're a kid? Motherfucker, I worked. Motherfucker, I worked since I was 5. So no, this was, it makes a lot of sense. Like when Uranus was going through my 10th house, I was auditioning, I was going out for a bunch of acting roles. My dad didn't understand it because we would do all this work for no pay and it was like very unpredictable. Sometimes I'd book a bunch of stuff in 1 year and my resume would look great and I'd make a bunch of money through it, and other times I wouldn't book anything for a year and I'd barely get a call back and I'd be scraping by. So it was really inconsistent. There were good times, there were bad times. It was very unpredictable, right? The idea of new technologies being brought into your career is going to come up too. For example, you know, like maybe you'll start working on social media, maybe you'll start working on new technologies, maybe you'll start being much more innovative and tech savvy in your job, or maybe whatever it is, right? Like for an example, something that came to mind for me was that self-tapes. This is when self-tapes became a thing. Me and my mom always had to have a camera and a tripod and a place to film, and you know, we were always doing all these self-tapes and having to figure out how to learn how to edit and all that kind of stuff, right? So that was a big thing with Uranus in the 10th house. And also, like, you know, I mentioned we're going to LA and back and forth all the time still during this time for my job and for my mom's job. Doing a job or trying to establish yourself in a career that's unpredictable, ever-changing, and fully depends on you fitting the trends, right? Acting. If I fit the trends right now, then, and I'm relevant, then I'm very castable. But if I don't, then I'm not, right? You really do have to kind of market yourself towards the trends a little bit when Uranus is in your 10th house, and make sure you have a job that kind of shifts towards the trends. I was also, because it's acting, like an example is like being asked to do weird random shit in your job. I was always being asked to do weird random shit in acting, just like stuff that was just like weird, stuff that was extreme, stuff that was inappropriate, stuff that was like way too ahead of my time. Like, you know, I remember being in a lot of like being asked to do a lot of emotional things that I just didn't understand and that I thought was weird, that they were making me be so emotional, and I thought it was acting, and it was just strange stuff. What I'm trying to say is the reason why this relates to Uranus is because I was dealing with concepts in acting class that were basically far too mature sociologically and psychologically for me to comprehend at that age, right? I just didn't understand how I was expected to know somebody who's going through a breakup would act when I've never had my first kiss. I don't know how I'm expected to act like, you know, I'm a mother on the plane of 9/11 who's about to lose their baby when I am, you know, 12 years old, right? And I don't really understand terror, and I especially don't understand pregnancy or children. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's just these highly advanced concepts that I'm trying to kind of, you know, very Uranian concepts that I'm trying to channel. Authority figure relationships are tense, and authority figure relationships are very unpredictable. There may be some people that you work really well with, some teachers that are really progressive, and other teachers that are way behind the times, other authority figures that you really struggle with, that you really butt heads with, and it'll be really hard to have authority figures in your life that you don't align with their higher beliefs, and you're really going to feel like you need to find those kinds of teachers or bosses or authority figures in your life. Also, you can be seen by the authority or authority figures as unpredictable, or as a wild card, or as, you know, just like they never know how you're going to act when you show up to do the job, or they never know quite what they're going to get with you. And it's really unpredictable, right? So that can cause some problems, right? That unpredictability in your job. You might quit a bunch of jobs, start a bunch of jobs, change jobs, show up some days, not show up other days, put in 110% some days, put in 50% other days. That can also be a thing as well. You do not want authority figures telling you what to do, and you will be hell-bent on only doing things that you feel like you agree with morally, or that can be explained in a greater sense, or in the greater picture. It is going to be very challenging for you to go along with bosses or authority figures just because they said so, right? You know, obviously I didn't really change jobs during this time, but oh, that's what it was. This hit in 08, and that was the 08 housing crisis, and that's when both of my parents got laid off of their jobs. So I did not, you know, my job wasn't affected, but both my parents got laid off at that exact time, and they worked a lot of like part-time jobs, random jobs. They were on unemployment. Like, it was very, very unpredictable. This was a time when they had to rely on savings, on everything like that. That definitely, my parents' jobs were very, very up and down, very unpredictable most of my life, all of my life, and they did very unconventional things, very Uranian. You may find talents you never knew you had, or there can be exciting discoveries in what you want to do with your life and where you want to go. Again, be open to new jobs, new career paths. The career path also that you may want may not exist yet. So you need to be highly innovative in what you want to do with your life during this time. Also during this time, actually, I did YouTube. I was always obsessed with YouTube. I started YouTube when I was a lot younger, like the shitty channels that you delete and then pretend don't exist. And that was a big thing for me when Uranus was in my 10th house, but I was too scared to actually fully commit to it until Uranus entered my 11th house, which I'll talk about in just a second. This is like an anecdote, but I do want to share it. So Uranus in the 10th house. So one of the big commercials that I booked when I was younger was a T-Mobile ad campaign, but it was an ad campaign for the phones for 3G. And so we did this big ad campaign. I was going to get a bunch of residuals. Like, we were seeing so many T-Mobile commercials at the time. I was so excited. It was going to probably be like a multiple thing, like multiple shoots thing. We might become like the T-Mobile family. Like, it was very exciting. We shot the whole thing and it went out, and I remember when it aired, we saw it for 1 week. I remember seeing the advertisements every day for 1 week. And then the next week, 4G came out. And my commercial was from the 3G stuff. And so very Uranus in the 10th house, they completely wiped out my whole commercial spot. They aired this 4G T-Mobile commercial for years. Oh my God, me and my mom saw that every day. And we were like, damn it, this little boy, this fucking little boy on this 4G ad would have been me. It's funny. It's funny, but it's super Uranus in the 10th house. Like, because I was not doing the one with the newest technology. We did it for 3G, not 4G. It didn't matter. Uranus in the 10th house. You got to stay relevant. I mean, it was outside of my control, but if it's inside your control, that's the lesson. You got to stay relevant at your job. You know, 3G's changing to 4G in a week. You may seem very controversial, especially from afar. Your image online as well, if you have an online image, may go through excuse me, a lot of controversy, a lot of changes. How people perceive you will probably be very changed. You may be more outspoken about your opinions, not afraid of public speaking, not afraid of speaking your mind. You're probably going to be bored or restless at work, want to do a lot more things, want to do something more innovative, want to do something using more of your brain. So I spent my whole Uranus in the 10th house transit trying to be an actress, and right when Uranus passed from my 10th house to my 11th house was the exact time I found astrology. And it wasn't until the end of my Uranus transit that what I wanted to do for my job slowly but surely flipped and turned on its head, right? Now we are going into Uranus moving through the 11th house. So this is actually the transit that I am in right now, and I'm coming to the end of, and I'm actually kind of really sad. I am excited for Uranus to not be intercepted in my chart anymore, but I am really sad for it to move out of the 11th house because I think Uranus in the 11th house is a really fun placement. I really like this placement. Uranus is at home in the 11th house. Uranus rules Aquarius, which is the ruler of the 11th house. But yes, basically when coming from the 10th house, your job has been completely transformed and changed. The way you see your future and your legacy has been flipped on its head. Like I said, this is the transit that I've experienced since I was 18. Since I was about 18, 19, so for about like 9-10 years. And again, when my Uranus passed over my 10th, 11th house cusp was when I was able to, was when I moved out of my family's home at 18, moved to California, a new city, a new very urban, it's a funny word to say, very urban, like poppin' city, very LA, right? Moved to the thick of the city, Sunset and La Brea, very Uranus in the 11th house, very relevant, very like the culture, whatever it may be. And I was able to separate my parents' ideas, 11th house, from my own ideas for the first time. I have a lot of anecdotal stories. I just want to warn you first off. So I'm sorry, I will be talking a lot about my experience. I accidentally wrote a lot about it. Yeah. Basically, because I was off on my own in LA, you know, my friends gave me this kind of freedom that I'd never been given before. And I actually feel like out of any time in my life, the time that I had the most ease with making friends and finding friends and friend groups and everything, and like having fun and stuff with friends was especially towards the first like 7 years of my Uranus. Well, I guess that's most of it. Yeah. For the first 6-7 years of my Uranus transit through the 11th house was when I was living in LA. So there's a big potential for friend groups, friends of weird places, friends from all over the world, friends of different backgrounds, unique friends with different opinions, all that kind of stuff. Just by chance, my college, my 2-year college I went to, it actually wound up being, I think it was like 60 to 65% international students. So Americans were actually a little bit of the minority. And I don't know why they had, well, I don't need to go into it, why they had a bunch of foreign students. It was, I think, for financial purposes. But I loved it and I really benefited from it because, you know, as somebody born and raised in Vegas, and that's it, I thought it was so cool that I got to go to LA, but simultaneously feels like I kind of get a little piece of a bunch of other countries. You know, you get to learn so much about them and hear so much about their life and learn about the cultural differences that I didn't even know were there. And it's just really nice and really eye-opening, and I absolutely adored that experience. And I'm more thankful for the people that I met, very Uranus in the 11th house, during my college experience than I am for the actual things that I was taught. Honestly, I wasn't taught that much, but the one thing though that is really hard and that is very Uranus in the 11th house is it's a lot of chaos, it's a lot of change, there's a lot of quick turnaround. So like I said, first off, this school is only 2 years long. Second of all, most of my friends that I made are international students, or at least from a completely different state, from the East Coast, from the South, whatever the fuck, right? I was very close to home compared to everybody else. That I could drive home was a huge deal, right? What happened after a few years of knowing these people is they all went back home. It's so expensive to be able to like live and stay in America. If you've ever, you know, I also saw the intricacies of that. You know, I lived with somebody from Cyprus. Taurus, and she was an amazing, lovely, like best roommate ever, actually, 1000%. And she was struggling getting citizenship and how expensive everything cost, and just how much, you know, there were so many limitations because she couldn't work, but yet she had to earn all this money, and it was just really, really hard. And so I definitely got to see a little bit more of, not fully like experiencing it myself, but like 11th house Uranus. It wasn't me experiencing it, but I kind of got more of like a closer look at about what that's like, what it's like to be, what it's like to be in different countries and all that kind of stuff, yada, 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 yada. But then it was very challenging because everybody left, and then I didn't know them anymore. And sure, we follow each other on social media, very Uranus in the 11th house, but you know, we're in completely different countries to see each other, yada, 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 very Uranus in the 11th house. But you know, there was, for the majority of the time of my Uranus in the 11th house, there was actually new cycles of friends I find, new people. I felt like it was, you know, especially with the rise of astrology and my rise of my interest in astrology, which is also very Uranus in the 11th house. There may be some new ideology that comes your way. There may be some, again, a lot of themes of sociology, why people do the things they do, why people are the way they are. Very much those concepts and will hugely interest you. And you may feel like you have a really taboo approach to it, or like the way you think your ideas may feel too ahead of their time or too innovative or whatever it may be, too controversial sometimes. Or like I said, Uranus can come from this very detached place as well. Also, Uranus in the 11th house deals a lot with social media. So this is when I started really, instead of being so scared, actually putting myself out there on social media more. Even just I started with posting on Instagram more. And then me and Nina started the old Party Trick Astrology page during this time. You know, it makes sense. I started it with the friend, you know, that's very Uranus in the 11th house, the friend that introduced me to astrology, who is an Aquarius, you know, very Uranus in the 11th house. Couldn't have written it better myself. But again, it was shaky. It was changing. It was very, Uranian, right? So all of a sudden it just stopped, you know, kind of energy, very Uranus in the 11th house. But because of my growing interest in astrology, that became a great way to make friends. That became a language I spoke with my friends. That became something to talk about with my friends. That became a way to talk to people at parties, in groups, whatever it was. It was such a huge social tool for me. And I think especially because, you know, astrology was becoming more popular online and in real life. And, you know, I was not totally at the forefront of it, but like, I was like, you know, I wasn't like a Uranus in the 11th house natally. I haven't always been on it. I was behind, but I hopped on it. That's what I'm saying. I hopped on it right as it was getting popular. Uranus in the 11th house, you know, because it started trending on social media more. I started posting on social media more, creating more of an online community. But also now that I'm thinking about it, my accounts changed a lot. I even had an autism account. I talked about autism for a while. I had that astrology account with my friend, and then that changed, and then I couldn't get a stable account over here, and then I got a TikTok, and now I'm doing this, and then I have a backup TikTok, like I don't just have like one, I'm not like a Trisha Paytas. I don't just have like one, you know, YouTube that she stayed tried and true with, right? It's been very chaotic and changeable and unpredictable, and right, like Party Trick Astrology didn't stop because of me. It stopped because of a friend, out of my control, very Uranus in the 11th house, right? Yeah, talking about how weird you are online, finding like niche communities that resonate with you, right? I found out I was autistic during this time. And why did I find out I was autistic? Because of somebody online, a girl online posted a video about it one day, and I went, who is she? Well, I've always related to her. What is this, right? Very Uranus, the 11th house, started looking it up, doing a bunch of research, you know, all that kind of stuff, posted about it online, did you believe video about it? All that stuff is very Uranus in the 11th house, you know, focusing on all my energy on social media, posting on YouTube, all that kind of stuff. All of it is very Uranus in the 11th house. It's almost like too overwhelmingly literal at times. And I've really enjoyed this part of my life. I have had a lot of fun with it. Now, I will say, as it's gotten later into the transit, the past few years of this transit, as I'm wondering maybe as it's getting ready to get into my 12th house in the next year, you know, I have been feeling a lot more isolated, you know, after I was around all these friends and around all these people, and then they all left and they all went back home. I didn't know anybody anymore. My mom died. I didn't have any family anymore. All these communities that I had made they all just chaotically just went away, kind of. I ran away at one point, you know? So at multiple points. And it has led me to where I am now, which is a lot of isolation. I have a super supportive community online. I love the astrology community that I've cultivated. I also love others astrology communities that have been cultivated. I just love how much people want to talk about astrology. That's the best in any way, form, or shape. I don't really care. But however, even though I feel more connected online, Uranus in the 11th house, I feel very disconnected in the real world, which that does, I think, kind of lead to Uranus in the 12th house. Because my Uranus was intercepted, I'm doing astrology on social media, not because of this like an influencer social media thing, but rather because this is the available outlet. Does that make sense? Like this is the, you know, I'm doing TikTok because that was what made sense, right? Like I needed to adapt to whatever is, I need to adapt to whatever is trending, whatever's the new way. I actually tried to work in a physical store like about a year and a half ago. And they were immediately like, the guy that was working at the store that I went to, that I really liked the store and he recognizes me and I really like him, so he felt comfortable with me. I asked him like, oh, what does it take to kind of like work in Vegas? Because it's kind of a big deal. And he was like, don't do it, run, go online. There's no point to do this. Like, and I felt like it was some like outer thing speaking through him. Because again, that was like a year and a half ago. I was really struggling financially. I was not supporting myself through this. I had another job, you know? And I was like, God, I really don't want to do this part-time job. I really want to do astrology. So that's why I went to this store, but it's just interesting with my Uranus in the 12th house that the store owner was like, no, don't you dare. He was like, keep doing the online thing. Even if it's not getting you anywhere, keep doing it. It's more promising. And I was like, fine then. That's the world telling me to like do this really intensely. And that's what I did. But yeah, very Uranus in the 11th house. So you need to be open to the new technologies that come your way, right? Also, as much as I have had a strong online astrology community, I have not ever really had a strong physical astrology community. I had the friend in Project Astrology, which was huge, but whenever I would try to reach out to a store or take classes or, you know, somehow have a community manifest physically, I just never felt like it really clicked. I felt like the odd one out. I felt a little different, or I felt like I couldn't resonate, or I just felt like I didn't like being told what to do and when to do it, and it just didn't really work out. I needed to be able to be told what to do and when to do it. Anyways, oh, with Uranus in the 11th house, there's also a big change in political opinions. I was also, because I lived a lot of the time in a city, but I also lived a lot of the time in a small town in the middle of nowhere, I was exposed to two very radical viewpoints. I was exposed to the most, you know, liberal of the liberal in California, especially during like COVID times. And I was also exposed to the most conservative of the conservative during these Trump times. So I've definitely been exposed to both sides of the radical spectrum. Now, because my Uranus was intercepted in one way or another, I've struggled to fully fit in with both. I did better in LA, but I still had some opinions that would really isolate me, because that people would probably agree with now, but at the time would still isolate me. But yeah, never fully felt like I connected to either. But let's move into Uranus moving through the 12th house. We have gone all the way through all 11 houses, and we are on our last stop of this journey today, or almost this evening for me at this point. Coming from the 11th house, actually this is the transit that I am going into. As I'm sure if you've been watching this video, you know, because in the last few houses, it's like all I've done is yap about myself. Sorry. So you just went through so many changes in friendships and in opinions. You must be tired. Right? Are you tired? I don't know. I'm not. Your views feel so ostracized. Maybe you got shunned or exiled somewhere because of them. No. No. A big reason I felt that I needed to, like I was kind of saying at the end of my 11th house one, like, you know, a big reason I felt I need to live in the middle of nowhere is because I do feel like the whole, you know, no one likes me trope, you know, during Uranus in the 11th house, I did lose all my friendships and family members, except for like one friend, one family member. So, and also, but you have to remember, I also been going through Pluto in the 7th house. So if you're Cancer rising, you may relate. It's a little bit more extreme. You know, I feel like people like me on first impression. I don't want you to think that. I think I've just felt so ostracized, and just after my mom died and blah, 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 whatever, my now stuff, I've just been kind of like, fuck, I'll leave everyone alone. Like, okay, that's fine. I'll leave everyone alone. They'll leave me alone sort of energy. And so it does make sense that Uranus is moving into my 12th house. I'm in a big transition phase, as I think we all are with all these changing planets. Again, that's why I'm doing that 30-minute transit reading. I think it's really interesting. But I definitely want to move again. And I'll kind of get into what I'm looking for, because I do think that what I'm looking for is, I'm like, okay, I do think that this resonates with Uranus in the 12th house, but I don't know. We'll see. Now that you've assessed the world around you and judged and critiqued and put yourself out there, it's time to turn that back inward on yourself. So this is definitely what I would think is more of like an extroverted time to an introverted time. With Uranus in the 12th house, I do feel like Uranus in the 11th house can give stark shifts in friend groups, that there's a big chance for extreme isolation with Uranus moving through the 12th. I do think this is a highly misunderstood transit, because it's the highly misunderstood planet of Uranus in the hidden, tucked away house of the subconscious of Pisces of the 12th house. I do think that this is an energy that can feel a little crazy, a little mentally unstable and unpredictable. And there can be, what I think there also is, like random psychic insights, random predictive insights. I was kind of like, this might be a lot better for predictions. Like if I want to do predictive astrology, maybe I'll get some random insights coming up and be like, oh, you know, who knows? Maybe, you know, something I was also thinking about with Uranus in the 12th house, it's like whatever you thought you weren't spiritually, you maybe are. And so something that I was wondering is, I was like, maybe by the end of my Uranus in the 12th house transit, I'll be like, I'm a psychic, because never in a billion years would I right now say that I'm a psychic. I don't think I'm a psychic. I've always advertised on my website everywhere that I am not a psychic, that I am not a medium, that I really believe, that I really do not feel as though I am. This is my Mercury. That is not a Mercury that you'd say, that's a psychic Mercury. No, it's a patterny, recognizing Mercury, right? It's very thinky, but it's not, you know, in tune as much. But maybe with Uranus and going through the 12th house, maybe I'll feel like I'm a psychic, and maybe I'll start saying I'm a psychic. I don't know. Just whatever it is, you're going to be much more in tune with patterns, more in tune with people, right? Sociology, emotional sociology, right? You know, where the tides are shifting, where people's opinions are going. That's why I think this is a good transit for somebody that's like into predictive, that, you know, is an astrologer and wants to do predictive things sometimes, or who knows. This definitely releases and shakes up unconscious habits. You're like, Shaina, are you a little nervous for this transit? Yeah, I also have Pluto going through my 8th house, yeah? We'll see. Stirs up situations in your private life. Ugh. Let's move on. Your private life may become more public. Oh, let's move on. You may become a lot more open about sharing your private life or the things that lie in your subconscious. You know what? I do want to be. I really do. I'm going to be honest. I want to put it all out there, but I'm like, oh, goodness. That's not going to bode well for me, but that's okay. Odd switches of dependency, interdependency, complete independence. There may be this real also like detachment and analytical perspective you had to have towards your subconscious. Your subconscious might more feel like a superconscious. You can feel like a genius, like you have strikes of genius, but it'll all feel like nobody understands it, or nobody gets it, or nobody sees it, or nobody believes it, or it's ostracizing you. It makes you feel weird or different, right? Like this can also, I think, be a very independent transit where you rebel against anyone needing you or relying on you. I wonder if this can be a little bit of like an army of one sort of transit sometimes, just because Uranus is like friendships and groups and communities, and within in the 12th house, it's like you have to maybe be that for yourself. Or what I was also thinking is, okay, because I think we all know that I really want to move, and where I want to move is like, I feel like a little bit, maybe I'm being optimistic, but I think where I want to move is kind of representative of like a Uranus in the 12th house transit. transit because I want to move somewhere that's like, I live in the middle of buttfuck nowhere, and I've lived in another city that was buttfuck nowhere for a year and a half before this, and but I don't want to live in the city either, so I want to live in like a mid-sized town that the number one reason I'm going to pick the town is based off of its spiritual, like metaphysical stores and shops and accessibility and community. Like that's like the number one thing I'm choosing it, and the second is weather. I want to live in a place that's like a mid-sized town that's very spiritual, metaphysical, and like kind of in a little bit of isolation and around nature, but still I need like, I'm so tired of living in a place that doesn't have like shops or a Walmart or like basic things you need, or if they do, it's really sketchy. Like I don't want that. I want to live in like a mid-sized city like Uranus. Like that's what I'm thinking, like Uranus, mid-sized people community, but 12th house and like a little bit more of a secluded nature environment, like metaphysical woozy. So in my head, I'm like, maybe this is a really good transit for what I'm looking for. But I'm also feeling like if I stay where I'm at, then I'm going to feel like a spiritual army of one. If you have underlying mental health conditions, they will probably come up or be highlighted in unexpected ways. I do think that the autism boat will be shifting like it already is, and people aren't going to give a fuck, right? As though they are. I think they don't already do. They already don't. But yeah, like, you know, where it once was very accepted and okay to speak about, I feel like it'll be back to like not being accepted, and I think it'll be back to like you're not autistic and like all that stuff again, right? Meltdowns or things of that nature, if you deal with anything of that nature, can become more unpredictable, more harder to manage. And within the 12th house is dealing with things alone and in isolation. So you having to deal with this stuff alone or in isolation, or God forbid in a mental hospital or a prison or an institution of some sort, Lord knows, a rehab. This detaches you from anything from the past that's outdated and not needed for the upcoming Uranus going through the first house transit. Disruption and surprises with secrets, karma, soulmates, and hidden enemies. Being more suspicious or mistrusting of people. Feeling like people are psychically unpredictable. People feeling like you are psychically unpredictable, especially when it's conjunct your ascendant. Random strikes of genius or insight, as I said, can radically change your spirituality. I presume the thoughts and opinions that I hold right now about astrology, the metaphysical, and the occult will go through huge changes and shifts with Uranus in the 12th house. I hope I dive deeper into it. I hope I get weirder. I hope I get more into it. I hope I get more knowledgeable about the secret societies and cults and all this stuff and occult topics and tarot and everything. I do hope it gets more intense and more extreme, and I hope that I maybe wonder if maybe one day I'll like step away from it all of a sudden or want to do something new, but I hope it's still like adjacent somehow, because I don't know, astrology is very, very fulfilling for me. It makes me very, very happy, and it is the thing that always holds me together, because I do have such a love for it that it's like you need passion to keep going in life, so I'm very afraid of ever losing that passion. But let's move on. Maybe that's what that's what I'm worried about, the 12th house. That's what I'm thinking, like, oh my God, what will I do? What will I think about? I'll have to find something even more intense to think about then. It has to be traded for something more intense. That's the thing. That's what I'm thinking. Like, it can't just be traded for nothing, because then like I am not somebody that can just sit there, especially with Uranus in the 12th house. Anyways, so your spirituality can isolate you while simultaneously drawing you closer to a cult or a group that understands you spiritually. Be open to new and innovative ways of healing or helping mental health struggles. Dream journals, hypnotherapy, etc. can be very beneficial during this time. It's actually crazy because I was thinking about this because I recently have been looking into hypnotherapy, and I brought it up with a friend too, and she was like, oh my God, I have been looking into it too. She said she knows like a hypnotherapist or something. I was like, oh my God. And it's crazy because I think Uranus in the 12th house is so hypnotherapy, and I've been really wanting to go back to therapy, but for the reasons that I want to go back to is for this underlying hidden family secrets that basically, okay, really quickly, basically a few days before my mom died, she dropped all this stuff on me and then she died. And so I have like all this stuff that I'm like, oh my God. And the only way that I'm ever able to get answers is if I were to do something like hypnotherapy, because the only way to answer this stuff is to go in my like early childhood, and I'll like never know. So that's why I've been more interested. So I've been more interested in hypnotherapy because there's something that my mom told me information about in my family, again, hidden family secrets. The only way to kind of verify, validate, or kind of answer some questions that I'm wondering that, you know, cannot be answered because my family's not in my my life and they won't tell me because I know them, I would need to go to something like hypnotherapy or some weird new kind of advancement kind of situation. But it is scary. It could potentially shake up everything though. My perception of my family, my ancestry, just all that 12th house kind of stuff, right? So that's something that will probably come up, you know, some kind of like deep, random, weird insights and searches into the mind, you know, deep insights into your true nature, truly why you are the way you are, feeling isolated because of your spiritual beliefs, or feeling misunderstood emotionally. You might even become more emotionally detached to the situations happening around you, you know, seeing them more observationally. The point of this transit is to free yourself from any subconscious habits that aren't helping you anymore, so you're ready to step into the first house Uranus transit with full potential and full confidence, okay? It's all about a journey inward instead of a journey outward. Finding freedom through letting go, right? There'll be a lot of chaos, but it'll feel a lot more internal than external. I'm actually super curious if you've recently been through Uranus in the 12th house transit. Can you let me know your personal experience with it? If you're willing and open to share any anecdotes, or even if you went through it at all and you remember it, I would actually be really curious. I am a little bit apprehensive for this transit. In some ways, I welcome it and I think it could be really good for me. I think it might help me socially a lot, kind of like be more in tune with why people do the things they do. Even if I don't fully understand it, I feel like I'll be able to get it more. I think it will be helpful for me in navigating relationships, but I don't know. Let me know what your experience with Uranus in the 12th house is. And honestly, just let me know your experience with any of these transits. I would love to know down below. I think a lot of other people that are going through their transits would love to know some personal anecdotes or stories as well. But yes, don't forget I sell birth chart readings on my website, shainaemily.com. I have a special transit reading special going on, $75 for 30 minutes. So if you want me to kind of look at Jupiter through Pluto, see what houses they're in, see what houses they're going towards specifically for you and your energies, then you can purchase that reading on my website, shainaemily.com. Those will be fulfilled the first 2 weeks of August. I only have a certain amount in stock, and once they're out of stock, they're gone. Thank you again to everybody who's purchased one so far, and I'm really excited to get into those. Again, I'll be taking 2 weeks off at the end of July because I'm going to visit my friend in New York. Very much a good conclusion to my Uranus in the 11th house transit. Actually, now that I think about it, that's really cute. I also have an astrological TikTok at shaina.emily. I also have a backup TikTok at shaina.emily backup if you want to see any videos from me in New York. If I post anything, I'll post it on my backup account. But yes, thank you again so much for watching, you guys. Bye!